Hi, my name is Mark Williams and I'm doing this video today as a full testimonial to the abuses that have occurred to me over the last 14 years. So I'm from the Leeds area of the UK and I've been a life coach for the last 9 years and involved in healing work, and I've been meaning to do this for a while, and I just wanted to go on record and basically give a full record, a full account of my experiences. And I would encourage any other victim out there to do exactly the same and give a full detailed account over time of what's occurred to them also, so we can start to build up a real bank of evidence, so to speak. So this will be my full statement as to where I'm at right now and my thinking on not just my testimonial, but my thinking in and around what's been occurring to me, as part of my testimonial. I will also do this in the most structured way that I can, answering some of the key questions, but of course sometimes the different areas will overlap, the different questions will overlap, so I will try and make it structured and as logical as I can moving through it. So I will also have to refer to my notes as well, because as you can understand, this is a very big big testimonial, so I need to refer to my notes to give me the best chance to fully cover exactly what has been occurring to me over the last 14 years or so. So I will also try and structure this in the afterwards so that you should be able to click straight to the specific point. For example, how do I think it's being done? Who do I think is responsible? You'll be able to click to these specific parts to make it nice and easy. This is just a quick call out as well before I start the full testimonial, that if the people who are doing this to me or are responsible for these attacks and using this technology on me are watching this, then I'm just speaking to you just to let you know that you know what you've done, and you know that you're liable. You will be liable for these assaults in a court of law when this comes to pass, when these start going to lawsuits and more court cases start to be filed, and this really starts to get dealt with at the top level, which I have every confidence it will. Is that you have a chance now to watch this and to come out and blow the whistle and to come out before this house of cards becomes tumbling down. So please, I just urge you to just watch this as a human being with an open heart, and listen to the devastation which you've caused me. I also just want to say to anyone who is someone who is in a powerful position, who is watching this, to please blow the whistle on this, to please investigate this, research this, investigate this, and stop this. Or as I've been using in my email campaigns, research, discuss, stop. It's really essential that you listen to this with an open heart and you research it, and you find the evidence to back up that what I'm saying is actually very true, and there are a lot of us suffering with this right now. So, and then discuss it with your peers or the people who are in positions of power, and then do all you can to stop these abuses right now to these innocent civilians around the world that are getting abused at the hands of government and corporations, and corporation involvement in this too. So with that said, I would like to start, and the first question I would like to answer is So how did this, I want to explain how this started to me, so how this started for me, and give you an overview as to what happened and how this came about. Well, it's challenging to say exactly when it started, but I know exactly when it started in a way that was very noticeable and started to have a severe detrimental effect on my life. And that happened to me when I was traveling around the world. My father just passed away. I got a little bit of money from a house, and I decided that I was going to go away traveling and really sort of put this try and maybe say find out a little bit more about myself and have a good experience at the same time. And obviously, I was still trying to process the fact of my father's death. So I decided to book a big around the world trip. It was going to be a 5 continents all affair, where I was going to be traveling around for a year, and the trip of a lifetime, one could say. And basically, what happened was I'd gone to Africa, I'd gone to Asia, Tokyo, and Hong Kong, and I came down into Southeast Asia. And when I came down in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, I started to come down with something which was very bizarre and very strange. I still remember experiencing it back at the time and thinking, something's not quite right here. This is very, very strange how I just went from being, just feeling okay, feeling good, feeling happy that I was traveling around the world, feeling excited, to all of a sudden having this intrepid anxiety, this real sense of doom, like impending doom all of a sudden, this real sense of dread, this real sense of that my life was over. I kind of felt that at the time. It felt godlike. All of a sudden, like, I felt like I wasn't in control. I felt like I was my emotions were everywhere. I was kind of getting really negative thought patterns and feelings and everything. And I just kind of put it down to anxiety at the time, and I was just having a bit of a breakdown after my father's passing and everything, and that I was just generally a little bit lost, with going around the world and trying to find myself, and everything. Just thought, I'm just having a bit of a crash here, but the thing which felt really strange to me at the time was just how it seemed to come out of nowhere, and how I remember thinking and feeling at the time, it almost felt as though something was being done to me. But logically, I would have no conception of the idea of remote weapons or neuro weapons. I would have no conception of the idea that it could even be done, that was even possible. And so I was thinking more in kind of like regular terms. Like I was just having a bit of a breakdown, and I had severe anxiety, and I just decided I was going to really try and get fit when I was away, and started really eating like really healthily, lots of juices and everything. So I decided to keep going on my trip, even though I'd kind of I'd rung home and I'd explained the situation of what was happening to me, and I just thought this will pass over, this will blow over, and even though there was a kind of sense inside that something was really wrong and this was here to stay, there was that kind of sense as well. So I keep traveling around Thailand and around Southeast Asia, and I agreed to meet my mother in Australia, and I get to Australia, where I'm set to make a decision. Do I keep traveling around the world? Do I go in South America, or do I go home? And do I try and quote unquote heal myself? Do I try and make my mind and my emotions better again? Do I try and become really relaxed and get over this anxiety, so to speak, or what I thought was anxiety at the time? And basically, I spent the next 12 years trying to get over this anxiety It was actually about 11 years until I really discovered what was going on, although I will explain that I was actually aware that I was under the influence of mind control or influencing. I was under some kind of influence which was influencing my mind from about 2011, I believe it was. Yeah, it was around that time, because I met someone else around that time where it made it clear that this kind of thing was possible. But I still wasn't on the right lines in terms of who was doing it and exactly how it was being done, the details of it, until around 2018. So I basically spent all of this time trying to heal myself from this anxiety, this horrific anxiety, and this impending feeling of doom. You know, had all these different symptoms, many of which actually, you know, fit into the kind of the classification of anxiety. You know, which is not really surprising considering that these weapons are meant to cause anxiety and do cause anxiety as a direct result, but it's not a strictly a neurological, a neurotic condition of anxiety per se, because it's not directly coming from me. There is a cause and effect relationship here, that the weapons are causing this, and these weapons can actually cause these symptoms of anxiety in and of themselves, because these weapons are designed as a war weapon, which is meant to which is directly for the purpose of you not discovering that these weapons are being used on you and what they are being used for, and the possibility that this is even being done. So I went home, and I was already into personal development, and I went into everything, every little last thing that I could do to try and to heal myself. You know, start getting into healing, Reiki healing, you know, like affirmations work, diet, exercise. You know, I did things like stress pack, things like that, you know, which is the government official method of getting rid of anxiety, cognitive behavioral therapy. I did many different, you know, healing techniques and strategies and methods of personal development to try and overcome this, and nothing really worked. You know, I started feeling a little bit better in myself, in my body, but I was still getting these attacks, these anxiety attacks and these panic attacks that seemed to come out of nowhere, and it was really bizarre how they would just come on, you know, like seemingly out of nothing, where I'd been completely calm the moment before. You know, it wasn't even related to my thoughts and my emotions and how I was feeling and what I was going through. It would just come, and that's kind of what was giving me the kind of the creeps about it a little bit, in terms of I couldn't quite figure out why this was occurring to me, and why it was occurring in this way. So just to give you an overview of the different stages I went through, I'll go and I'll explain some of the symptoms in a little bit, but I'll just kind of give you a general overview of my path from when I went travelling, and this happened to me, up until now. And it's worth just saying that I cannot be 100% sure that this started 100% when I was actually travelling, because even though I noticed that's when it happened to a large degree, and I noticed a massive shift in my life, a massive change in my life, and I noticed that I was getting, well, I didn't notice I was getting hit hard because I didn't know I was being, that these were being used on me at the time, but I noticed a massive change, and I noticed that I all of a sudden had this severe anxiety. So that's when it became noticeable, but there's no guarantee that actually this technology was not being used on me prior to this in more subtle ways, because I've heard it, I've read it, and this makes sense, that they introduce you onto these programs very incrementally, so that you don't notice the effects of this technology, and then they slowly start to increase it over time. Of course, they have the perfect excuse when I'm traveling away, you know, because you know, you might just think that you're having a bit of a breakdown when you're away from home. Your father's just passed away, you know, and that you're all of a sudden you have some kind of anxiety, you know, maybe you're missing home or whatever. You know, it's a plausible excuse. So maybe it was coincided at this point in order to make me think, you know, that I was away and I was losing it, and that's why I was kind of, you know, I was all of a sudden having these severe, you know, these really difficult challenges. But there's nothing to say that this wasn't happening before I went away, because when I was looking back at parts of my life before that, there were certain things that were looking back, I can't quite explain exactly what they were, you know, and certain things, for example, where I would find it hard to literally, it's like my brain wasn't quite working. I would go and think to do something, and then I couldn't literally get up and do it. And you know, and I would also, some of the feelings and the way that I was feeling, and the feelings of kind of not being able to almost like control my actions in terms of brain to body. Of course I was in control generally, I wasn't going to do anything stupid, and I still won't. I'm not that, you know, because I'm very mindful of what I'm doing and I'm aware of what's going on. But it almost felt like on a day-to-day level that there wasn't that relationship between what I was thinking and then directly being able to do that. And also some of the emotions and the way that I was feeling at the time, kind of looking back and linking it together, were very suggestive that this could have been going on before that, but perhaps in a more subtle way, and a more discreet way. So moving on, I came back and I decided I'm going to do the half marathon. You know, I'm going to go on the Great North Run, I'm going to get really fit and healthy, change my diet, everything. And I spent, I ended up getting a place in Leeds, and decided I was going to have a go at doing my own business. And I noticed that this was when I started binge eating, and all of a sudden I would get these crazy addictive feelings of food, where I would go and eat things, and I would literally eat myself with like junk food and cakes and biscuits and chocolate, until the point where I was almost sick, you know, and I was unable to move. And it's like I just could not stop myself from doing this, and it was a real issue for a while. And even today, you know, I find certain aspects of it challenging. You know, this is one of the symptoms that the mind control, the neuro weapons, or the electromagnetic weapons causing you, is to create that addiction in you, to try and make you chase your own tail, so you're wasting time, and you know, you're not able to be effective, and it's also a form of psychological torture to make you addicted to something. So what happened was, it would come to the weekend, and even during the week sometimes, you know, I'd have these binges, and I would binge and binge and binge, and I would spend about £40 on junk food, you know, ridiculous amounts on junk food, to the point where I couldn't function for 2 days. I could not function for like sometimes up to 2 days after it, and I would feel terrible, you know, because I was already having these pulsating headaches and, you know, these feelings of anxiety and everything else that was going on to me. But back then I couldn't really define what was going on with me in the same way that I can now, after researching this and kind of after experienced it and speaking to other people who experienced it. So, but anyway, this started happening, and I was finding it difficult to like apply for jobs and kind of get any meaningful work. I didn't feel like I had any ambition. I didn't feel like I could relate to people. I didn't feel like I had almost like that kind of natural enthusiasm or ability to relate anymore. I felt like real feelings of depersonalization and dissociation, you know, all which on a conventional level, you know, could have, you know, had this conventional explanation of anxiety. But I came to discover that actually whilst there was many similarities, there were also some very distinct differences, which were what was going on with me. And when I started to piece together what was happening, it started to become very clear in terms of exactly what was happening and exactly how these weapons were being used on me. So, but basically, my life was was falling apart. It was not where it wanted to be. I was a pretty much an emotional wreck. I couldn't go out and do things, and the only thing I could bring myself to do, and sometimes I couldn't even do that, was go out on an evening and meet with friends and kind of, and just kind of fritter away my time like that, and hardly a meaningful pursuit. And just finding my notes here basically. So what happened after that was there were lots of strange things happening to me, basically, and things that I couldn't understand. I couldn't understand why. Here's another example. I couldn't understand why I was going self-employed, doing this internet marketing all of a sudden, and I was also doing an eBay business. But what would happen was when I was trying to succeed, it's like I was just going round in circles, like I was just going on websites, and I couldn't stop searching on the websites and wasting my time and going round in circles and not doing what I needed to be done. And I also noticed that when I was when I was just about to succeed or get somewhere, all of a sudden I would be off in another direction, and I would be off trying to do another, like, I wouldn't say like another business, but I was trying to do something else, maybe within internet marketing. One time I was trying to do SEO and succeed that way, and the next minute I was trying to, do blogging, and there was no consistency to what I was doing. It almost felt like I was out of control, and that I was kind of, I wouldn't describe it at the time like I was being led astray, but I remember feeling just like, why on earth can I not just do the simple things and be very structured and logical about it? Why do I always feel like I'm getting like swept off in different directions and seemingly illogical directions? So, this kind of perturbed me, and I didn't, even though I was using all of these personal development tools that I'd learned my whole life, again, I never felt I was able to achieve any real measurable success from doing this. So this was an early example of my career, my financial and wealth and career aspects of my life being devastated through these mind control weapons, through these microwave weapons, through this electronic harassment, as you might call it, with many different phrases or from different angles. So anyway, I also noticed it was very hard to potentially try and meet someone. I was looking for like a potential partner, and this was something that was also seemed to be very, very challenging. I'd never had any kind of difficulty on that level before, and all of a sudden it was almost like it seemed very challenging and difficult to do that, which is another example. And my relationships, my friendships also were just so incredibly challenging. Like I remember feeling like my almost like I couldn't control my ego. Like I couldn't control my level of hurt and my level of reactivity to people, and this was devastating my relationships and making it hard just to kind of build them foundations and trust. I'd have a good friend one minute or a best friend, and then all of a sudden, they were out of my life, or this was partly due to my own the mind control that was going on with me, bringing me away from these relationships constantly. So anyway, eventually I did a meditation retreat, and I started getting into spirituality, and things started to shift for me a little bit. I started to notice some big shifts inside. I started to feel a lot better, a lot cleaner in my body, a lot more pure, a lot more energetic. Like, a lot of the anxiety, it kind of subside, somewhat. It did make a difference, doing all that good exercise and getting out in nature, sitting by trees. I did everything. At one point I was spending 11 hours a day doing personal development, healing work myself. Mostly it was healing work. And, there was a while where I thought, God, I'm actually starting to get over this. It was really making, a substantial difference to how I felt underneath. But then, every now and again I would still get it, quite strong, but it didn't feel quite as intense as what it was before because of the good work that I was doing on myself. And went on a meditation retreat, 10 days, and I decided that I was going to go to India. And I went to India, and again, when I was in India, the isolation began again, and I stayed in the youth hostel, and I stayed to myself, and I was just doing my own spiritual activities in my own room, and I couldn't understand why I had so little desire for life to go out and experience. There was no sense of excitement there like there should have been, and how there was previously when I travelled. It was almost like I was dead as a person. It's like my soul was just devoid, and so I was spending all this time in isolation, and even when I was getting out, I was feeling unable to relate to people in that way, and speak to people in that way, or do anything. I was having tremendous anxiety around food, which was a pattern which continued. I was very funny with my food in terms of what I was eating, to the point of being neurotic. I mean, on one level it was good because I was very careful about what I was putting in my body, but on another level it was a problem because I was very neurotic to what I was eating and putting in my body, to the point where I had to eat 100% raw, and it had to be the very best quality of food, which was very hard to achieve in India because a lot of the food is crap, full of pesticides and that. So this was causing me a lot of anxiety at the time, and I started losing a little bit of weight because of it, because of the way I was eating, and everything. And eventually, I got sick. I got unwell, and it wasn't actually because of what I was, because my diet was, these challenges that I was having my diet with, the way that I was thinking, which I know in retrospect, a lot of this was due to the mind control patterning and the programs that were being run on me at the time. But it was actually due because I got ill for another reason, and it could have been very serious. I could have actually died, and it was only due to somebody else seeing what was happening to me and saying to me, I think you should go to the hospital, and saying this to me, that I saw sense, because I thought that I could heal this all myself, and kind of with the way that I was thinking at the time, kind of being into the healing and kind of and being under the heavy influence of this mind control, I wasn't quite on accurate in terms of my way of thinking, in terms of how to go about this. So I was just trying to heal this naturally. And somebody said to me, says, you need medicine, you need to go and see someone. And I say this to emphasize the fact that I recognize and remember, looking back, that it was the mind control that was stopping me from being able to see very clearly how serious the situation was with me. And when I went to the hospital, I had to undergo surgery, and it was serious. Had I waited much longer, I could have potentially been, I could have potentially, something very serious, like could have lost, potentially a limb, or even died, So I say this to make it very clear how this technology, either directly or indirectly, is a killer, is because of the patterns that it runs, either directly or it's all run on AI, it's all run on artificial intelligence, and through the patterns that it runs, through the mind control patterns that it runs in algorithms, it can create situations or patterns of thinking or patterns of oppression that can potentially result quite easily, actually, if you're not aware of what's going on, in accident, injury, or death. And I say this with absolute confidence in terms of knowing that this is what these weapons do. And they seem to do it both indirectly, through the devastation that they're causing and through just generally oppressing you, but they also do it directly, which I will go on to explain more about in different ways throughout this video. They can do it through, for example, suicide programming. Many victims have reported suicide programming on themselves through the weapons. This is a direct way that it does it. It can also do it through accidents, where it tries to get you to walk into a car, for example, or something like that, and you feel yourself wanting to veer onto the road all of a sudden. And I need to make the disclaimer here that I am in no way, even though this is being used on me, this pattern, many times, I am in no way suicidal. I am in no way out of control or a violent individual or have any of them kind of tendencies. And this is one thing that I want to say on the record, that I would never ever do that to myself, and I would never ever break the law or do anything intentionally like that. So if anything were to happen to me like that, this is another reason why I'm going on the record to make it abundantly clear of the foul play that has been happened to me over this last 14 years or so. You know, exactly when it started, I can't say, but when it started, you know, in a significant way, when I got the really bad anxiety and all of this, my life started to fall apart, was obviously when I went travelling and in Thailand. So anyway, continuing on my story, I'll cover a lot of these symptoms later on and come back to some of these points. But going on with my story, I decided I got better. I got well after the surgery. I spent Christmas Day in India, you know, in the hospital. I went out, I was on a cocktail of drugs. I really felt like I was sinking into myself, and I felt that the more that I was taking this medication, I felt that the worse that I got. This mind control patterning, it's almost like it's able to know through, because it's intelligent technology, what the areas of devastation or the potential areas of devastation are in your life, and then it latches onto that thought or that idea through the remote neural monitoring, through monitoring the brain waves, and then it creates destructive algorithms and patterns and symptoms in and around that area of your life, or in and around that point of devastation. Like it brings you, it takes something like an area of weakness or an area of vulnerability or an area of opportunity where it can bring you down, and it takes that and it uses that and utilizes to bring you down that negative train of actions, that negative line of actions, or that negative train of thinking, which leads you to that negative actions. So anyway, I came back from India, and I wasn't well for, I was trying to recover from this for the next 3 months, and everything about me, my belief in spirituality, my belief in God, everything around that point was destroyed. And this great thing that I discovered, spirituality, which seemed to be the saviour and the way out of this pain, all of a sudden I had doubts about everything. It's like the mind control works very well at trying to, anything that is potentially a benefit or that can help you, it will start to give you doubts and start to make you fearful about doing it, or give you doubts about the effectiveness. And this was what had happened to me. I'd had this traumatic experience where I could have died. I had this post-traumatic stress from what had happened to me, and in and around that, this mind control had also been working to devastate any positive belief or source or resource that I had in order to cope and to get meaning and to move forward from the situation, which is why all of a sudden I had no faith in the spirituality or in God or anything like that. It really worked to destroy these things, directly, but also indirectly. So I went home. I went home from India, and it took me quite a while to get back on my feet. Eventually, I got back on my feet, did some voluntary work, and I decided to do some teaching assistance work, and that seemed to help me to get back on my feet, but it took me ages before I was able to work full time again, because of the stress and, the ability to be able to cope with things. And I also decided to qualify in Reiki and to start doing healing, as a way to try and to not just help myself but to help other people. And that decided, kind of brought me into the path of doing the coaching that I'm doing now. Yeah, it was a very tough period after I came back from India. My whole world had crashed, and it's almost like I had to rebuild all aspects of myself and everything about me. And for a while I was very skinny, I wasn't eating properly, which was part of the effects of the mind control. I'd be super skinny one minute, and then I would like binge eat completely, as in the patterns and ways I was describing before, to the point of being sick, and I would put on weight, and then I would go skinny again. And it was like this yo-yo diet. I had no consistency with my diet, and it was very painful. I couldn't understand, why had I done all of this work myself with personal development and put all of this investment to myself, and yet look at me, I was unable to achieve anything. I was unable to do anything good in my life. I didn't feel like I even had, the kind of my friendships and everything set. Although I have good friends, I didn't feel even that was in the kind of the way it should have been. The stable way it should have been, or the easy way it should have been. Or the normal way it should have been. All relationships have challenges, but in the normal sense, it should have been relatively straightforward. So coming back from India, and one of the things it does also, which it just did there, is it tries to make you lose your track of thoughts. It plays with your memory processes, so that when you try to think of something, it's literally the brain is not functioning in the way it should, because your head just feels really cloudy. It's something you can, because you've got so much electromagnetics and frequencies going into your head, you literally can't think. But it also has the ability to directly interfere with your memory processes, so that you literally lose your train of thought, or you can't remember something that you were just thinking a second ago. It can do this for 5, 10, 15 seconds, do it longer, and it can also play with your long-term memory as well. So I was talking about India, and I came back from India, and so I came back to India, and I moved into Kirkstall, and eventually I was working as a TA, and I was doing the healing work and so forth, and just getting some paid work doing that as well, a bit part-time. And this was all helping, but it was still there, and I was getting into a lot more of the spirituality work at the time, the ascension work, and discovering a lot more about mind control. But it was all from kind of a spiritual experience. I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe there is spiritual oppression. I believe in spiritual oppression and demonics and these kind of things as well. This is just my personal belief, and so this was kind of the way that it was kind of explained away, because I was already a very spiritual person, and I was learning about these things which do exist, or at least from my experience and my research, and on my path, they certainly exist. But anyway, so I was explaining everything away in terms of that this was God, communicating to me, and that there was and all of a sudden God was coming into my life in a huge way, and I thought, this is great, God's speaking to me, and I found out later on that I was direct victim of something called voice of God technology, which is something the whistleblower Dr. Robert Duncan talks about, where someone who is spiritual or religious, they will use this voice of God to purposely think that God is speaking to them, so that the person is more manipulable. And it sounds like science fiction, but this technology exists, and Dr. Robert Duncan has gone on the record. I recommend looking up his testimony, or just typing in Dr. Robert Duncan, voice of God, and you'll see that this exists. So, you know, and this was making me even more manipulatable, and the ability for them to influence me even more, because I believed that God was interacting with me this way. And, you know, it's okay looking back and saying, you know, how could I have been so stupid? You know, I was actually feeling it coming down. You know, I was feeling these frequencies coming down, which I later found out was the microwave and, you know, weapons and the mind control technology, the neuro weapons, you know, that was being done to me remotely through this artificial intelligence programming. But I was perceiving it and understanding it as God speaking to me, and that God was coming down, and the energy of God was coming down and was interacting with me, because I could feel it coming down, the presence of God coming down, and I could feel, you know, I could hear the voice of God, you know, and or the voice to skull, as many victims of neuro weapons, as many targeted individuals so call it, you know, the voice to skull, voice to skull. There's actually a patent which you can see online. So this technology has been available since 1974, and like many patents of mind control technology, of which I've seen over 100, proving and showing exact symptomology that corresponds with the symptoms that many and most of the targeted individuals that I've ever spoken to or interviewed or been friends with have also complained to me that these exact same symptoms that corresponded to the patents and how the patents operated, the correlation was there between the two, and this is also evidence in terms of what is going on. So I was saying about the I've just had that thing again where they're playing with my memory processes. So, but we'll get there eventually. So I was getting back into work, and I was getting into the spirituality, and they were using all of these psyops in and around ascension, and making me think that I was possessed and all of this stuff, and it was just like, you know, it was nonsense. You know, I was doing all of these like spiritually clearing things at the time, and I was actually quite a pure individual spiritually, but they were trying to make me think that all of this was, you know, something that was that I was possessed, and you know that that all of these demonics were onto me and things like that. And it was, you know, it was just, this is something other people have complained about as well. It's not just me. But because of the way I was thinking at the time, my understanding, I didn't quite have the full picture yet in terms of that this is a technological thing as well. You know, mind control is a technological thing, you know, which is what this this testimony is about. So anyway, they were able to influence me with making me believe that God was speaking to me in this way. And it sounds ridiculous, but this is actually what they can do. And this is not even, you know, this is not even the tip of the iceberg in terms of what they can do. You know, this is, you know, quite basic stuff, you know, in terms of this technology. So this led me to going around in circles for many years, because I was kind of manipulable in that way. And, you know, I felt like, of course, it was very scary as well that they were able to manipulate me in this way, and kind of create these psyops around, you know, these things, making me think that, you know, these demonics were around me all the time, and things like that. And I just want to say that the devastation this caused to my life, and the fear and anxiety and the panic that this program caused to me around this, and the way that it did it, is nothing short of satanic in and of itself. It's nothing short of evil. It's pure evil. What they did to me, and what they're still doing to me now. But, you know, at the time it was even worse, because I didn't understand fully what was going on, and I didn't understand that it was a technology. I'd come across the idea at that point that it was this was being done by, intelligence, military, and so forth. But it didn't really stick because I wasn't aware of it at that time. And, exactly, I wasn't thinking on them lines at that time. So anyway, moving forward, eventually I went through these periods of coming in and out of spirituality, and going in one direction and the other, and not feeling like I could ever succeed in my life coaching path and my healing work, and I also did some teaching. I also qualified for a teacher's training post in Bradford, and I thought this is just the new start I need, and it was very hard. It was very stressful. I was still being attacked all of this time. I was working 12, 13-hour days, while this was still going on. It was tough. It was very tough, and eventually, at first, I was doing all right. I was getting by, and then eventually, it became clear to the people who were on the course that I wasn't cutting it. That I wasn't sharp enough. That I wasn't aware enough. That I was asking questions that were showing that I wasn't switched on enough. That I wasn't paying attention enough. That I wasn't aware enough. And even though I'm a very intelligent person, because of the interference and the amount of thought oppression, and the kind of misdirection and kind of the interference with the mind control, and the kind of the effect that has on your confidence, and the kind of fear that invokes, it really took me off track. And there was some things, I had a couple of observations where they came to me after that and said, this is not for you. They even said, you're more of a healer. And I've never really publicly spoken about this before, but anyway, I've ended up me getting them saying to me, we're going to give you 3 months pay, but we're really sorry. Everyone really liked you here. You're a lovely guy. No one had a bad word to say with you, but this is just not. You're not fit for you. You're not a teacher. And I was just like, I just wanted to get through that course, so that I could qualify, and at least I could do something, like go and do supply, and and have that in the bag, and not be on the minimum wage anymore, because that's all I could cope with. I could only do a simple job because of what was going on with me. My mind couldn't cope and couldn't function, couldn't comprehend and understand and relate in the way which, or organise or lead in the way which would have been conducive to a higher paid job, or my own business, which I have absolutely no doubt in my own mind that I could have succeeded, and to extraordinary heights with the knowledge that I had and the strength of character that I have inside, should I have not been interfered with this way inside. And that really hurt. That's really hurt a lot, to think that one thing for me is I always wanted to do my best, and I always wanted to give my most and help people and really put some good out in the world, and I just felt like I couldn't do it, and I just felt like I just couldn't move forward, like I was just getting knocked down. And at this point I knew, I was aware of the mind control technology, and I knew that I was getting knocked down, and that there was almost like that I couldn't get above that ceiling point where, I'd get so far, I'd just kind of try and get out, and I was on that beginning slopes of trying to do well, and all of a sudden it's back down, knock you back down. And this is part of the torture that mind control technology can do in an individual. It's almost like Pavlov conditioning, training someone like a dog. It's torture in the way that it just keeps beating you down, continuously giving you that trauma and that post-traumatic stress from that in every day-to-day life, and in your events, situations, relationships, actions, even just drilling down them emotions of fear and dread into you. They can program any emotion into you, and the corresponding thoughts and corresponding thoughts at the same time, to make you think and feel in a certain way, and give you, and also lead you in certain directions for psychological operations. Most of this is being done by the technology or the AI, in my experience, from what I believe in my research. Although there does seem to be a human element in it. You know, Dr. Robert Duncan, for example, talks about, you know, EEG heterodyning, where there is a human element, where, you know, where human operatives can also, you know, influence you through EEG heterodyning and remote influences, synthetic telepathy. But most of it, my understanding, my experience, is done through the AI and the algorithms. Anyway, so moving on to, I went self-employed for a little bit, and that seemed to be going well. You know, I actually put everything I could into the life coaching. And I joined BNI, Business Networking Group, the biggest in the world. I made loads of really lovely friends. You know, I was making a bit of a name for myself in BNI, and I was succeeding against all the odds. I was really doing well. I was really, you know, despite just feeling pure terror and pure anxiety going to them meetings in the morning, I somehow managed to make a bit of a, you know, to rise above and really stretch myself and seemed like I was breaking out of things. And then again it came crashing down, you know. All of a sudden it was like, I thought, you know, what is going on with me? You know, I still at this point thought something spiritually was going on with me. I was like, I've got to take some time off and heal from this. And, you know, and then my business that I was just starting to build and be successful went crashing down again. Back to zero, pummel down again. So, and yeah, it's soul destroying. It's soul destroying to continually have to work hard to do the smallest little thing in life, and even to get out of bed sometimes, and then to, you know, and even to survive, you know, and or to get anywhere, and you're doing well, and then all of a sudden to get battered down or dragged off in another direction via the neurotechnologies. Destroying, absolutely destroying. To anyone else who's going through this out there, I understand what you're going through. I absolutely, my heart goes out to you, honestly. It's soul destroying, soul destroying. And they say psychological torture or harassment is worse than physical. And while this is a combination of both, I would say that psychological torture is probably worse, because with this, you know, until people start to help us and out of these situations, there's no end in sight. You know, people are being put on these programs for like 10, 20, 30 years with no end in sight. And so it's been, it grinds you down daily. And that's what it's done. It's ground me down daily. And every day I've had to get back up and use all of the personal development techniques and all the strategies just to be battered down again. Although, you know, I have become stronger over the years, and I have reached some kind of equilibrium in myself, you know, because I've got used to the technology and the way it works, and, you know, I've become better able to kind of counter that. It's still running these same oppressive patterns on me and these same cycles on me today. So I took some time off work, and it was in that time when I discovered that this was actually the government that was potentially doing this. And I did a lot of research, and it was interesting because I'd been praying, you know, I'd been praying before that, you know, that I would discover what the source of this was, and I all of a sudden, you know, I had this kind of almost like this urge to like look at this keyword phrase on Google, and I found out all of this information which relayed to what was going on, and all of a sudden the penny started to drop. All of a sudden I started to make all of the connections between what had been going on in my life over the years, and the symptoms that I was having, and correlating them to the symptoms that it was talking about in the research that I was finding out in this, when I'd done all of the searches. And I just really started, you know, researching for about must have researched solid for about 2 to 3 months to find out as much as I could about neurotechnologies and neuro weapons and microwave weapons and all of these, remote neural monitoring, which is where they're monitoring your thought patterns. And so I did lots of research. I found out everything that was going on, and I said I knew this was going on with me. The patterns were too consistent with what was going on, the way that it was being done. There were specific things. For example, the way this was, that the frequencies were mainly being directed in around the left side, like it was stronger in there on the left side, and also there was some effect of the Jews as well, which was which was corresponding to painful symptoms that other people had experienced. So there was lots of correlation, and I realized, and I knew at that point what was going on. And I said to myself, I can either brush this under the carpet and almost like pretend this is not happening and kind of just try and make the best of my life, or I can do all that I can to speak out and stop this. And so I made that decision, and I said, this is wrong. I'm gonna do everything that I can in my power to stop this. And I was in a lot of fear. It was kind of, there was about 1 or 2 months where I was almost disabled, like mentally, in terms of that I was in a state of mental how do you call it, paralysis, where I couldn't break out of that fear barrier to try and take action, to try and raise awareness. I didn't know where to go, I didn't know what to do, I didn't know how to approach it. I was very scared, and eventually I made the decision that I was going to connect with other people who'd been going through this, although I had a lot of fear around being labelled as a targeted individual, even though I knew that was just a label, that was a descriptive label. I thought, what's so I had a lot of fear around that, but I found credible ways to speak about it and to relay it, and found out a lot about the technicalities of it, and I started to do a lot of activism, and I wrote an ebook about it to try and get myself a better understanding about it. I started doing the mail merging campaign and wrote these massive email campaigns. I'll talk about this later on, but I started doing things anyway, and then eventually I moved house to where I am now, and I'm still like a massive activist in the UK for this cause. I know a lot of other victims. I've spoken to probably hundreds of other people now going through the same thing. Very specific things, very specific patterns, and I also learned a lot from these people. They taught me a lot and helped me clarify a lot of things that had been going on in myself. And so anyway, that kind of brings me towards the moment. I co-led Targeted Individuals Day, and also was another thing that I did. And going on to the symptoms now, I'm going to give you a quick this will be my specific breakdown of the symptomology that has been happening to me over this period. And I know I've discussed quite a few of the symptoms before, but I'd really like to break this down and go on a full record in terms of what has been happening to me, and the electronic harassment is known as it's caused, the electronic torture symptoms that have been happening to me for the last 14 years. I want to give a full breakdown of this. So I may cover a few things that I've said before, but just be patient with me because I'm having to work through this list to make sure that I get everything right, and I'll try and talk about each point as I'm going through to give a better understanding and a better record of how this has affected me specifically. So the first one is technological mind control. Well, this is the most essential aspect of the microwave weapons torture, or the microwave weapons that are being used remotely on me. This for me has been the most debilitating part of how these weapons have been used. These weapons have also been used on me for what you might term more as electronic harassment, which is, you know, more the direct energy weapons, the microwave weapons in other words, the weapons, microwave weapon assaults into various parts of the body and the symptomology that is created. That's more electronic harassment, although mind control is a part of that electronic harassment. But what I'm trying to say is the mind control aspect that has been the most destructive and the most debilitating for me, due to the oppression that is created in my life and the devastation that is caused in every area of my life, emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, you know, my career, my wealth, you know, with my relationships. It's massively destroyed or hugely diminished every area of my life, and especially what I consider in comparison to my potential, considering that I have the tools to be able to succeed to a very significant level, and yet my life has been very average, below average. I've had to survive a lot of the time, and found simple jobs and simple things to do difficult when, you know, in reality they were very simple things to do work-wise. So it's the mind control, it's the technological mind control that has been the most devastating aspect of this electronic harassment. As part of that as part of this mind control, one of the things they do is subliminally program you. So this is also a patent that you can look up. If you just look up patents of mind control or patents pertinent to mind control, you will see the famous one that relates to the subliminal programming. And because I'm very sensitive to this these days, I can feel when some frequencies are very gently coming in, and when my mind, the nature of my mind is being changed, or I'm starting to feel and think in different ways. You can notice even a lot of the more subtle mind control symptoms when you get used to it, and when you're sensitive, and when you become still. For example, in meditation, you can start to feel, you know, the correspondence between the feeling coming in and the change in your mind, or the mind control effect that is being caused as a result of that, i.e. the change in your mind and what you're starting to think and where you want to start to go. You can feel the correlation between it coming in and the change that is going on here. So the subliminal programming, there has been much subliminal programming which has been done in my sleep, and at times where I have been busy or unaware. A lot of it does go under the surface, but there is, you can, and I have been able to feel some of it, and I can feel that direct correspondence. Although sometimes the mind control is very strong as well, and, you know, or is audible, or you get images as well, and sometimes it's very obvious, and it's more of like an attack, and then other times it's more covert, and it's incredibly sophisticated. You know, these weapons have been around since the 1920s. You know, in terms of people, you know, the Tavistock Institute was doing this in the 1920s. You know, and the CIA through MKUltra in the 70s, and before that, you know, since the 50s. You know, and after the World War II, when they got this technology off the Nazis under Project Paperclip. So there's a long history in this. You know, if you're just hearing this or listening to this, it's very important to realise that what I'm saying, there is a long history of. Anyway, so, you know, this, you could say that there is, at times it's very strong, and then other times it's more subtle, and it's kind of like it's working to create certain psychological operations, you know, underneath your radar, so to speak. There's been the remote neural monitoring, which is basically they are able to survey your thoughts and your emotions from a distance, doing this remotely. And my understanding is that they're able to do this via, according to whistleblower Carl Clark, through radar, through a base station, and through EEG, remote EEG. I found out the EEG from somewhere else, but through radar and EEG and computer programs, artificial intelligence computer programs. The EEG is just like them doing an EEG in a room, but they can actually do this remotely. They have the technology to do this remotely to someone. So they can read every single thing that you do, every single thing you think, and according to Dr. Robert Duncan, they even have the ability to recreate from the certain part of your brain that sees in pictures and sees in movies what you are seeing through your own eyes. And again, this sounds, crazy and out there, but they have the government have the technology to do this. It's, whistleblowers have come out and said it's 30, 40, 50 years ahead, even up to 100 years ahead. So this has been going on, the remote neural monitoring. This is how they're able to survey you over periods of time, 24/7, even when I'm sleeping. I'm feeling the triangulation, from the microwaves, in terms of that they're able to not just locate you, but also not just track you, in your physical location and keep an eye on you in that sense, but also in terms of your thoughts and your emotions and what's going on. And then because they know your thoughts and emotions, they know how to use that through the AI algorithms in order to attack you, in order to use the mind control on you. So it's the remote neural monitoring and the mind control go hand in hand. So I've also had the voice to skull, or the V2K, used on me for a long time. And again, whistleblowers have come out like Dr. Robert Duncan and have confirmed this is going on, and it's being used on innocent civilians. So a part of this has been a lot of verbal abuse from these programs, trying to, just a lot of it is like just nonsense. They run these almost like these cycling, repeating patterns, but it's kind of like it's unpredictable at the same time, and it's like a lot of it is just kind of nonsense. Like, 1 minute they may be saying something like defaming you, or we call it slagging you off. I call that. That's not a very good way of saying it, but saying something offensive to you, like you're useless. You'll never amount to anything. That we're going to kill you. All of these ridiculous things that they say, and so they it's just nonsense. Or you've got an illness, or you've got anything that can derail me or create fear. The whole point is to neutralize and bring you off track and keep you chasing your own tail and going around in them circles. And so any way they can do this through the verbal harassment, and my understanding that most of this is done through the AI, although there may be a human element to this at times, as Dr. Robert Duncan talks about through the through his testimony. So you name it in terms of verbal abuse, it's been pretty much done to me and said to me, and it's just terrible. It's just terrible how anyone could do that to anyone. I don't know. So anyway, V2K, voice to skull, again, it's a patent. You can look it up. It's not new technology. And these abuses, by the way, have been used on people, in remotely since at least the 1970s, according to my research. So, and really started to take off after 9/11, and in the 1990s as well. I believe a lot more people put on these programs, from what I understand. So, they'll also, as well as insults and threats, threatening me to do something, or like not to go somewhere, or not to speak to someone, or just generally that I'm a dead man, or whatever, or that we hate you, or anything like that, to intimidation, alongside the myriad of other symptoms that are going on with me at the same time. They're also giving verbal intimidation alongside that, and alongside the other psyops and patterns that they're trying to create in and around. It's very sophisticated how it works together, and you almost wouldn't believe it unless you're part of it. Luckily there is so much evidence about this that we know this exists. There's so many whistleblowers, there's so many patents, there's so many leaked documents, declassified documents, and mind controls of MK Ultra. But if you're just someone who's just hearing this for the first time, might be shocked this technology actually exists. And I can say categorically with 100%, not just from my own experience, but from my own research, that this 100% exists and is being used on many innocent civilians around the world, perhaps up to 3 million or more, according to NASA whistleblower Richard Lighthouse. So anything from insults to threats to intimidation to misinformation from the V2K, the voice to skull, misinformation to take me off track, to destabilize me, to confuse me, to get me thinking in the wrong trains of thought. And it's also worth saying that the microwave hearing effect is also a scientifically proven phenomenon. It was proven by Frey by scientists, I believe it was Michael Frey in the 1960s, 1961 I believe it was, and Alan Frey, in 1961. And he proved, back then, that you could get that microwaves you could audibly pick up mic sounds and voices from microwaves remotely when they were directed at someone's head, or when they happened to go near someone's head. People were able to hear actual audible sounds in their heads because that was how it happened originally. It was almost by accident that the people could hear these audible sounds, even though it directly weren't being put into the person's brain. They could actually hear these audible sounds, and they could also hear ringing. They were getting ringing in the ears and buzzing in the ears and clicking in the ears. That's all part of the documented, scientifically proved microwave auditory effect. And this is exactly what I've also experienced, is that ringing in the ears, the clicking in the ears, the whooshing, the buzzing, which is also what the US diplomats in Cuba and China, which is starting to hit the mainstream news, are reporting about now. That they've experienced exactly the same effects of the microwave auditory effect. And they've also, the largest government study has also proved that it was directed pulse microwave energy. Well, this is what's been happening to me for the last 14 years, this microwave hearing effect. Anyway, moving on. So, I talked about the voice of God weapon, as talked about by CIA whistleblower Dr. Robert Duncan, who actually worked on these weapons, and how that led me astray for a long time. Mental torment in many ways. It's almost impossible to go into the many different ways this has gone on, but as I go down my list, it will start to become clearer, and throughout this testimonial. Pains in different areas of my body through directed energy weapons or the microwave beams. They've made me, there was a real period where I went through where I had severe body anxiety, severe health anxiety, and even now I still have some health anxiety, because my health is very important to me, and what they've done to me has given me some level of anxiety, which I'm still working on today, even though I know what's going on. But for a while it was horrific. They would, because I didn't understand what was going on, they would make me think that I was ill all the time. And they would put, for example, the directed energy weapons, the microwave weapon frequencies into my liver, and then they would make me think through the mind control that I had some kind of blocked liver or diseased liver, and then I would go and research it. And then, of course, when you're researching that, you would find some evidence or someone online who had something that would all of a sudden make you afraid that you had that, and it's terrible. I'd have directed energy weapons into my spleen. I thought I have problems with my spleen now, and that's causing problems with my liver. And it would go from one thing to the other, and I couldn't understand why it would seemingly go from one thing to another, why I was getting pains in one organ, maybe for a couple of weeks, and then all of a sudden it was completely disappearing and getting better. And then all of a sudden it was my stomach which had the problem. And it got to the point where I just thought I was generally ill, that I was generally physically a weak person, and that's not actually the case. I'm actually, considering what's going on, I'm impeccable with my health, and I'm a very, very healthy individual, but I could not see it at the time because they're creating all of these directed energy weapon effects around my body, they would play with my digestion, and make me need the toilet instantly, and I would think that I had, irritable bowel syndrome, and then I was researching about that, and of course, I'd do so much research about it. Again, I was chasing my own tail, and I was going around in circles, and I was unable to, to find new clients for my work, and there was times where I was, almost unable to work, doing the work during the day, and I'd waste like months on end doing this research about these supposed ailments and illnesses that I thought I had. It was all being done as this big psychological operation to keep me chasing my own tail and make me think that I'm ill all the time, and that's just not the case. And so, and also directed energy weapons into my heart, into my lungs, stopped me breathing, making it difficult to breathe. I will go through this list, actually, because this list will give me a more solid way of going through this, so I know that I've got all of the different symptoms, but I will explain more about these directed energy weapon attacks into my body, this electronic harassment. So I've also had, since day one, since this first happened to me in Thailand, one of the stink things that started happening to me was I also started getting severe pulsating headaches and real head pressure. I would have this horrible, like fuzzy feeling in my head, this horrible head pressure, this horrible cloudy feeling in my head, this real kind of feeling that my head was like scrunched up at the front. And it was horrible, and I would go through severe periods of that, and I still get that now today, and I can feel it when the weapons attacks start coming into specific areas, and I can feel the headache and the pressure getting more. But I also get the headaches just from the remote neural monitoring, just from the tracking and the triangulation that it's able to do on the different points in and around the head, because they're doing that 24/7. It gives me a constant feeling of like tightness in my head and head pressure, and it's horrible. It's absolutely, you have your head feeling like really cloudy and mucky, and the whole time that in and of itself is torture, especially over the long term. Give it a week or so, and you can deal with that sort of thing. But give it a months or years, and that is torture in itself. And I know that you can see just from looking at me that I'm very mindful, and I'm a very congruent person. I'm very considerate of what I say, and to make sure that what I'm saying actually, I'm a very researched person, and that I am amazingly in and through this still able to work. From the moment I get up to the moment I get to bed, and still look after myself through health and exercise. And so you can see that I'm a regularly functioning person, and you can see from the glow on my face probably that I look healthy in that. But all of this is still going on with me at the same time, and creating all of these horrific effects on me, and my whole life has almost been a counter effect to that point. And why I'm trying to say this is so I know that you can see from looking at me and what I'm saying, that even though what I'm saying, maybe some of this may be new to you, that I'm a very credible individual, and that I am very well liked, and people listen to what I've got to say. Like people, that people respect my opinion, and my work, and so this is something that I feel necessary sometimes to say, because you have to point these things out in terms of that people need to look deeper. People need to look deeper and look at the patterns of what's going on, and use a bit of common sense. Use a bit of common sense and look at this person saying, and then do their own research and join the dots, and think, actually what this guy is saying is congruent, and the things that he's saying, no one could or would make this stuff up. It's you just couldn't do it. You could not make this stuff up. And the patterns are too consistent. This is what you really find when you do the research, that the patterns are too consistent with thousands of other people who are coming out and saying the same things. So I really just want to drill that home, is that you know, that I'm a respectable member of society. I'm a credible witness to what is going on. And I feel privileged that in some sense I've been able to have the strength to speak out about this, and to know that I can do so in an effective and an efficient way, and in a way that is accurate, and a way that is a way that is credible to the cause and as what is going on. And I just implore you to do your own research on what I'm saying. And also what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in the links description the some more evidence and whistleblowers and patents, and that you can actually go away and you can actually research this for yourself. So this will back up what I'm saying in this testimonial. So yeah, moving on. So yeah, they're also able to put these images and these movies, you know, they can actually put movies, like running movies in your mind as part of the mind control programming. You know, and some of these have been absolutely terrifying, you know, making me, you know, and they can do this when you're sleeping as well, and program you've got dreams of this, you know, it's this synthetic dreams, you know, they can actually do this to a person when they're programming, not just through their dreams, but also programming and mind controlling them generally in their sleep, which they have done to me, so that when you wake up you feel unable to do things, where your mind all of a sudden is going in a different direction to what it was before. So then you have to reprogram yourself again to counter that, and it's a constant battle. It's a constant battle with what's going on and the effects of that. So, you know, they do it through these pictures, images and movies in your mind, and that's part of the mind control and the neurotechnologies. And yeah, they're also able to transmit any single emotion, anything that you could think, feel or experience in your everyday life through the senses, through the mind. They are able to replicate that with the neurotechnology, with the mind control technology, because all they have to do is know which area of the brain to stimulate, and the specific thought patterns and the specific emotions that are tied into that, and they can recreate anything by knowledge of the brain and the different areas and what they correspond to. For example, you know, whether it's thinking, emotions, they know how to stimulate these parts and through the neurotechnology and through this technology in order to recreate anything. They can recreate anything that you can think, feel or say, you know, inside your own, with your own senses, through the technology. So they can create a whole array of negative emotions, you know, not just anxiety and depression. I've been through a lot of depression, you know, with these weapons, because the one way to create depression is to keep knocking someone down, and then it's almost like in some ways that they're able to use this technology to give you a glimmer of hope and let you succeed for a while, and then they knock you down again. It's almost like I've seen patterns to suggest that is one way that they do that in order to make you more depressed. It's almost worse when you feel as though you're starting to break out and starting to get somewhere, and then they beat you down again. And I've seen some evidence myself to suggest that they're able to do that as well. So they've created depression in me, you know, and a lot over the years, and a real feeling of sadness. You know, when you find out people are doing this to you, you know, even directly or indirectly, mainly indirectly in terms of that they've put you on these programs and they've left you to rot. You know, it can have a big effect on me It has had a big effect on me psychologically. You know, that people can be that cruel. You know, people can be that mean that they can do this to not just me, but you know, millions of people around the world now. You know, up to 3 million or more, according to whistleblower Richard Whitehouse's predictions. One of the things they've done is they've created isolation in me. So they've tried to isolate me from my family and friends by making me have problems with my family, like inside. Like, again, they know how to trigger and play with someone's ego and create negative feelings about other people, so that you think that they're doing that to you, or they're a bad person, or they're a nasty person, or they're an unfair person, and they know how to trigger a person's ego. They've done this to me so many times, to the point where you think, I'm not going to speak to that person now. And they get you feeling like, kind of like, they get your ego all involved and get your ego invested, and then before you know it, but also they mind control you away in terms of that they get you chasing your own tail and kind of bringing you in other directions, so that you don't have time to relate to people, or they make you too slow to get back, or to forget to get back to someone, and then your relationships start to break down. So all of these techniques and tactics are used to isolate you, and also, because sometimes you're not quite as congruent as what you would be. This can also discredit you with people at times, because you don't quite act in a way that is quite normal, or they see something's not quite there with you, or you're not quite as aware, and so, or you speak out about this, and these things in and of themselves can sometimes have a discrediting effect, where your friends and your family end up thinking, discrediting you, or thinking that you're talking, like, that you're not making sense, or that, so this is another way that they can bring you down, is through this discrediting process, by making you so confused and so not sure, making it impossible to make a decision, to know what's right and what's not right. Obviously, I know what's right in a very, very basic sense, and I have a very structured idea of life, but there's also times where, it's almost impossible to make a decision, and I've had to work really hard at being logical and being critical and thinking critically and holding my concentration in order to relate in a credible way, so that I don't discredit myself because of what's going on, and my ability to, and my way of speaking out about it and talking, even saying about what's going on. It's all designed to make you look like you're mentally ill, or that you have some kind of problem with you, and it's just not the case. It's just it's done in that way to discredit you. It's just designed to make you look crazy. Like I said, it's very sophisticated technology, what they're doing to people, and it's designed in that way to go unnoticed by the individual. There are many people who are going through this for years, and they don't even know it's happening to them. Anyway, moving on. I'm going to be more succinct in what I'm saying now, because I feel as though this is quite a long video, and I want to really go through these in a bit more of an efficient manner. So, suppression of career, like I said, just not able to get off the ground, and even now I'm trying to find some work and do a job, and I just don't feel as though I can do it. Like, I'll sit down and I'll try and do it, and then I'll get distracted, or I won't be able to concentrate, or I'll get a lot of fear coming up, and then I'll be blocked for a while just because I'm just paralyzed with fear, or something, or I always break through in the end, but it's so debilitating. Suppression of career, like I said before, I had my teacher training, and then they gave me up, which was really destroying. I went through lots of different phases before with my career, where I was self-employed, and even when I did reasonably well at a few of them, it never really went anywhere in the end, and I wasn't able to keep it going. There have also been times where I feel as though I've acted like maybe not in a way that people would have thought is quite normal at work, in terms of that I've not felt able to speak out and relate in a normal way, and so I've been very quiet. And I think that this has not helped me at work at times, because people have just thought like what's wrong with him? Why is he so quiet? Why is he not joking around like we are, and things like that? And it's literally because I was so mind controlled at the time with stuff. I mean, I'm better now, I'm a lot better now, and I'm able to relate to people at work finally, and kind of have them relationships at work. But it's still hard sometimes, keeping them relationships normal, and kind of allowing myself to interact in normal ways, But you know, I'm getting there, and I think I'm doing, you know, doing really well now, pretty well now, considering all considered. But it's had a devastating effect on my my ability to relate at work and to even, you know, keep that going. I think there's been a few times, you know, one or two times where, you know, this has stopped me from being able to keep placements going. You know, although luckily I've managed to get really good feedback most of the time, because I've tried so hard, you know, and I'm a decent person, you know, people can see that. There has been other times where, you know, it's just got too much. Luckily, for the most part, you know, I'm very good at what I do, and I've got a lot to offer in the line of both of the lines of work that I do. But it's just a shame that I'm not able to fulfill anywhere near my full potential and to feel good about doing it and feel good doing it. And you know, I could go on, but I think I've said enough now about that for now. You know, maybe I'll talk about that later on. But yeah, involuntary body movements. They can create involuntary body movements like jerking and twitching and pulsing in your thumb, so your thumb starts to move by triggering a certain muscle. They can do also where, you know, they'll put a thought down in, say like reach, you know, you want that food, and all of a sudden you'll reach for a food, or you know, you want to go upstairs now, say you're doing something useful downstairs, something productive, you want to go upstairs now, and all of a sudden, before you even get the chance, you know, to think, that you, all of a sudden your body will be moving in that direction. And, you know, luckily I'm a very conscious person, mindful person. You can always think afterwards and be mindful and stop that from happening. Luckily I'm very in control and mindful, and so I've never been harmed from this technology, despite what I was saying earlier. And so they've tried to create accidents, and with the suicide programming that they've done, I've always had that mindfulness that's kept me strong and has stopped me from doing anything dangerous. And, you know, I've always been reliable in that sense. But it's still horrific what they're doing, and it's still horrific what I've had to experience. I would not wish upon my worst enemy. And yeah. So the next one is creating addictions, especially around food. They have, from the early days, given me many anxieties around food, even to the point where probably, you know, I would have had like what you call a psychological food disorder in terms of my relationship towards food, and a bit of OCD around it, or quite a lot of OCD actually. So they've created addictions where I just can't stop thinking about my next meal, and I can't stop thinking about eating junk food. It's always junk food they're trying to program me to eat. Things I don't want to eat. For example, I haven't wanted to eat like things like dairy and meat, and yet they will try and get me to eat these things, and eat these things in the form of the junk food, you know, the junk food that contains the dairy, the junk food that contains the meat. It's always the worst things that they're trying to get me to eat. And it's like they can put this image in your mind, like you want fish and chips. And then all of a sudden you have this program that you want fish and chips, this mind control program. And it's playing, it's like it's there in your mind, playing away, and you just can't, you're trying to type and do your work, and you can't think about anything else apart from that. And it's a form of torture in itself. And of course, sometimes it leads to the binge eating, which is horrible and makes you feel rubbish. And you know, this is killing you. This is effectively killing you through making you eat unhealthy food. It's a form. This in general is a form of genocide. But even through the little things they do to try and detriment your health and create ill health in you is also killing you, because someone who eats junk food all the time will die an early death. So they have they've also tried to create addictions around, they've tried to, well, they actually succeeded. I didn't drink for 12 years, 11 years after this happened to me in Thailand, because I just wanted to totally purify my life, you know. I didn't put anything in my body, alcohol, or anything that you would even call toxic into my body, you know, at all. And you know, I've always lived since university, really. I've lived pretty much a healthy lifestyle. I drank a bit too much at uni, but as you do. So I didn't drink for 11 years, and they mind controlled me back into drinking as well. And they've also tried to create addictions where they've tried to get me to try drugs and to take drugs, which is something which I find abhorrent. And I generally do find drugs, even the idea of drugs, abhorrent, you know. So that is something that's very concerning to me. So it's all to create that addiction, and when they create the addiction, you know, that wastes your time, it takes up your time, and it's a form of psychological torture as well, because of the pain that comes with addiction. So it's all about control, you know, you use that to control, it's all about control, the whole thing. Feelings of insatiable hunger and thirst as well, not just, you know, the addictions towards the junk food and to food in general, but also insatiable hunger, where you just feel so hungry you could have eaten a big massive meal and you'll feel, you know, your stomach will be bursting full, and yet you still have this insatiable hunger. And you, as I say, you can feel this coming in, you know, a lot of the time, between the correlation between it coming in and then the mind control of the thought they're trying to create, the emotion they're trying to create. They often create the thought and the emotion together in a kind of looping way, you know, the kind of, or a consistent way, should I say. So they can create, and they have done, unquenchable thirst as well, where you're really thirsty, even though you're drinking like 3 to 4 litres a day, or, you know, a lot of water, you know, still feeling thirsty after that. Forced speech, you know, they will, all of a sudden, they will put something in your mouth to speak out, especially in a situation which could be quite sensitive, to try and get the other person to react, or trying to get you into an argument, so that you speak something out and make a fool of yourself, or don't relate well to that person, or create the other person to become upset with you, or angry with you, or aggressive with you, because they will put that thought, and it will, you know, sometimes it will just come out, or sometimes you'll have to bite your tongue to stop it coming out. That's another thing they can do, by the way. They create, I feel this very high frequency come in, and it makes my teeth clamp down onto my tongue, and I've bitten my tongue so many times, not just when I'm eating, but just when I'm out and about, or when even when I've been in bed sleeping. They have done this to me, and I've bitten down on my tongue. Sometimes I'm able to stop it, most of the time actually, but sometimes I don't, and my tongue has actually bled from them doing this. Dr. Robert Duncan also talked about this and mentioned this symptom. The CIA whistleblower who worked on these weapons for the CIA and then blew the whistle. Sleep deprivation. This is a big one amongst victims or targeted individuals. I don't actually like that phrase, targeted individuals, but it explains something. So please do not be put off by the word targeted individuals. Please just use it as a phrase to help you point your research in a deeper direction. Because I think sometimes that phrase can put people off, but please don't. Please just use it as a general term that can help you find out more about these weapons and about the individuals who have been affected by this. So, sleep deprivation. I've been deprived of sleep many times, where I'm trying to get to bed and I still have the pulsating headaches going on. I am getting the mind control getting on. I'm getting severe stimulation via the electromagnetics, which is giving me so much energy that I can't actually sleep. I'm generally feeling really foggy and just lousy, so I can't sleep. There are lots of ways that they can cause sleep deprivation. You know, they can stimulate your brain. They can, but it all revolves around making you feel really uncomfortable and either on edge or energetic to the point that you can't sleep because of these reasons. You know, it generally revolves in and around that, or what they're trying to do. You know, and sometimes they can do this, you know, when you're really needing the sleep, or when you're the most sleep deprived, you've got something really important the next day, you're starting a new placement, or you've got some important work the next day, or when you're going through a really high pressure period. You know, it does seem to coincide a lot of the time with that, and you know, these psyops that are being done in and around the sleep deprivation to cause these, to create that outcome, so you can't perform in your day-to-day life. Another thing they do is they also, and they actually, this is something that affects me more than the sleep deprivation, is they are always, day by day, almost every day I get this strong at some point during the day at least, but some days I get it for profoundly long periods throughout the day, or at least, you know, like a couple of hours, or sometimes, like, you know, just, it's mainly when I'm at work. They often do it to when I come out from work at the evening, is they are able to put you to sleep with this technology. So, you know, you could be there fine, and then all of a sudden you feel the frequency come in, and all of a sudden your eyes are really heavy and closing, and it's really strong. You know, you're struggling to keep your eyes open. You know, all of a sudden you're saying, you know, it's trying to put the V2K into you, saying, you know, you're feeling sleepy right now, and things like that. Ridiculous things that, you know, when you just come back and you just witness that and use the mindfulness of that, it's like you're not even saying that, you're telling yourself just to be quiet, and yet these programs and thoughts are running anyway. I mean, this is one of the ways in which you can determine and identify what's being done to you, and the psychological operations that are being done is by becoming really still and just observing and seeing it revolving anyway, and feeling the frequencies and the resultant effects of what it's trying to create inside you as that's happening in real time. So they can make you feel really tired, you know, all of a sudden, you know, they generally make you feel really lethargic because they're directing electromagnetics or microwave radiation into you 24/7. Sometimes they make that really intense. I believe they do it across the whole body because they're trying to pick you up by radar. So the radar literally bathes your whole body in the electromagnetics, which makes your body really lethargic and tired generally, to the point where sometimes you feel really physically weak. But because they're doing it in your mind as well, and creating that mind control pattern and that mind control programming, that you feel really tired, you feel really tired, you feel really tired, that also puts you to sleep, in combination with the fatigued and the horrible feeling in your body from the fact of being bombarded with microwave radiation all day. And, you know, and then the you know, the other effects, like the you know, when your eyes start to close, you know, with all this, when they're using the mind control on you. And I've been knocked out to sleep in a matter of minutes. In a matter of minutes, you know, they can actually do it logically. So, you know, you'll come home and they'll say, oh, you just, you know, they'll mind control you, just lay down for a little bit. You'll go and lay down, and then all of a sudden you'll be on your back, and they'll mind control you to sleep on your side and to shut your eyes, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, you're out. And it's almost like it's crazy how I've witnessed how they can do it as a step-by-step process in order to make it more likely for you to go to sleep. Because you wouldn't just fall asleep in your chair. So there's a step-by-step process that they do to get you in the most comfortable situation and in bed, so that you can therefore go to sleep. So digestion issues, I think I spoke about this earlier. I've had it where severe pain in my stomach through the directive energy weapons, through the microwave attacks, sometimes for a full day, or even going on over periods, you know, on off for a week, or just generally strong for a week. I've had diarrhea from this. I've had seemingly constipation as well, where it's like my digestive system has just stopped working because of the electromagnetics, and therefore it gives me constipation. I've had pains in the stomach. I've had loose stools. I've had feelings where I just, all of a sudden I felt fine, and then all of a sudden they stimulate my bowel to the point where I just need to go to the toilet straight away. And it's not just inconvenient and painful, because you have to, well, let's leave it there. What they're doing, they can stimulate your bowel, they can stimulate your, to go to the toilet. I've had it before where I've literally had to stop my car and go to the toilet, go to somewhere private as I can on the side of the road and urinate. That's how sadistic these people are. That they can stimulate your bowels and, either directly through your digestive system or directly into the part which stimulates you to go to the toilet in either way. And we'll leave it there. Let's just say that basically that I've been running many times where they always do it when I go out running, and I've had to stop my runs because I'm in so much pain that all I can do is focus on trying to counteract not going to the toilet. It's horrible. It's absolutely, it's terrible. So, I said I wasn't holding anything back. So, and you've got to understand that these patterns are not normal. I've basically been to the doctors about many of these symptoms, and they've come and gone, and they've come and they've disappeared, and the patterns in themselves are incongruent and unpredictable, and they can't diagnose things because they don't know what they are, and they don't relate to anything that they know, or they'll come and they go. And so a lot of the doctors have been completely baffled about what's been going on with me. And I've also been to the doctors more times than I would care to even admit in the early days, because I thought I didn't know what was going on with me. I thought, like, geez, why am I getting all of these ailments all over my body, and supposed what I thought were illnesses, or the start of something, and then it would move on to something else, and the patterns were totally unpredictable. And now, because I'm aware of it and I'm more succinct, I can feel them coming in even more clearly. I can see through this, so I'm a lot more wise to this. I'm a lot more, I'm pretty good now these days, generally. Although there's still some anxiety around that. I can still get a bit, anxious about my health here and there. But, yeah, so digestion issues. Also, I believe they've used this technology on people around me at times. So I believe they have used this on someone once, for example, as a example, to make them really aggressive and to start a fight with me. Even though I wasn't doing anything bad, I was just simply expressing my opinion. And this person reacted very aggressively to me and over the top, and I've seen this technology, seemingly come into someone else and take over them. And you get very succinct and very aware and acutely aware to observing little things and movements and odd patterns and actions in people around you when you are used to this technology, know the way it works. And I believe that it's been used as this street theatre, as they call it, this symptom of street theatre, to create chaos and havoc in my life, more than I probably know. But I've seen these odd patterns of behaviour in people, these inconsistent patterns, and almost like something comes over them, and all of a sudden they're being like aggressive to you or overreactive, and whereas before they were just listening, oh yeah, okay, like that, and all of a sudden something comes over them, and they've all of a sudden they're giving you lots of hatred and aggression and going off on one, and it's unbelievable to see. It's well, obviously it's believable because I know that this does happen, but it's shocking to see. The level of sophistication that they can use to disrupt your life, and even some of the people around you at times as part of this, to either take them away from you or make them react to you or may potentially even program them. I believe this has happened where they programmed individuals to come away from me and not be friends with me anymore, or think about me in certain ways. The next one is induced trauma. Well, I mean, this is daily, induced trauma. I've had so much trauma from this, it's not even, it's surprised that my mind and my ability to function is still there. This is an extension of MK Ultra, which was found in the 1970s, as well documented on Wikipedia and everywhere. The CIA were caught doing these mind control experiments, to involuntary subjects. So there's a long history of this in the UK and the US governments, with Tavistock in the UK, and so they know this is an extension of the mind control experiments that were done with people in laboratories and face-to-face in person, where they were able to split people's minds and create symptoms of schizophrenia. So while most targets, the vast majority of targets actually do not have any mental illness, it is well known through MK Ultra, and if you're into studying things like psychology, that through trauma and through programming, in the ways that they do through MK Ultra, that they're able to create these split personalities, or these alters, and this fragmentation of the mind, or this fragmentation of consciousness. This is well known to anyone who's in spirituality, or the conscious movement, that they're able to do this, that this is in fact a thing that can be done. So what I'm trying to say is, this is an extension of the MK Ultra, where they're able to do all of this remotely and much more covertly than they were able to do in the early days, through this sophisticated technology remotely. And so because of this, they're able to induce this trauma to you remotely, as part of this, to try and fragment you, to try and break you down, basically. So I just want peace. I just want to heal. I just want to heal. And, I want that peace of mind. I want this to stop, so I can just be in that stillness and allow this trauma to heal, because it's just being added to me daily. It's being added to me daily, and all I can do is just observe it. Find that stillness and that awareness in me, and just observe it. So they've created pain in my body, inflammation in my body, in certain areas of my body. Also, when I've had an injury, for example, I've fractured my foot a few times, and I've had other things, accidents, things in my body, at times over the last 14 years, and they specifically target the directed energy weapons into that point where the pain is and where I'm trying to heal, to the point where the pain is excruciating and I cannot heal, and it takes me a lot longer to heal than it would have done were these attacks not being coordinated with malicious intent through this technology and the programs that run it into that specific point. And this has happened to me numerous times, and I know other victims have mentioned the same thing, how these attacks have been maliciously aligned into areas that are weak or experiencing pain or diseased areas. In fact, these directed energy weapons, microwaves, are known to create illness and cancer, and there are many victims who have fallen prey to these illnesses, these physical illnesses as well, mainly physical illnesses. I say it can create mental illness with time, because they're trying to split the personality, but most victims are mentally coherent but just having trouble with the symptoms. However, the worst thing is the physical symptomology, that they're able to create an individual where they're actually able to create illnesses with time, either directly or indirectly as a result of the microwaves that they are putting into certain areas of the body. So this can happen either indirectly, just generally from the microwaves, or because a certain area of your body has been exposed more than the other. For example, they always target my liver. My liver has been targeted the most. I've always felt this blocked feel in my liver. So they can either do that directly, through the programs, or perhaps intentionally, or they can actually do it intentionally, where they do it, I believe, this is my understanding, where they can actually create an illness over time by focusing, say, a directed beam on your heart or your spleen or a certain thing to weaken that area and create an illness in that area. It's impossible to say the level of sophistication they have in that, but nothing really surprises me that much anymore in terms of some of the abilities that they have using these weapons. They can create, very sophisticated effects and psychological operations using this technology. Microwave radiation burns I've experienced also. I'm lucky that I've not had them in the same extreme way that many other people have had them, where they're like all over their body and they're really, bright and red. But I have had some minor radiation burns from the microwave weapons, which makes sense because microwaves burn. You put some in the microwave, it burns. And I've also had severe overheating. For example, they'll put the microwaves into a certain area where it will start to give a burning sensation in that area. I've had this also. It doesn't necessarily leave a physical mark, but it's burning you as a sensation. Like I said before, I've had instant induction of needing the toilet in the most inconvenient places or when driving. I've already gone into that. I've had shortness of breath and choking sensations. So this is one of the, for me, one of the most worst one out of a lot of them, because it's everyone's, you would think it would be a right to breathe, and to breathe without interference, without something or someone, without something interfering with your breathing processes. And yet I've had these directed energy weapons blasted into my neck more times than I care to even recall or mention, where all of a sudden you just can't breathe. You're literally just choking for breath. It's like that, trying to breathe, and they do the same to your chest as well, where your chest gets really tight, or they direct some directed energy weapon into your chest and you can't breathe all of a sudden. And so they direct it into your chest and or your throat, and you literally, sometimes where you literally can't breathe, and there's other times where it's just harder. It's like that, but it can take you back, and you're just doing something all of a sudden, and all of a sudden you can't breathe. It's terrifying, and I went to the doctors about this many times, and they could never find anything wrong with me. Like most of the things I went to the doctors about, they could never find anything tangibly wrong with me, because it was just, they were just creating these effects and these symptoms, but there was nothing physically wrong as a counterpart to that. So that's one of the worst for me, is the interfering with my breathing process, or generally they can make your chest really tight, so you're just tight generally, and you just can't properly breathe, and you feel really uncomfortable. They can also they also do directed energy weapon attacks into many different areas of the body, to make you uncomfortable, or to make you paranoid about your health, to make you feel anxiety about your health. They also can do these really high frequency shots into different parts of your body, where it feels as though you're being stabbed by a pin or being stung by a bee. And many other people have reported this as well. And it can be anywhere, and they often do it in your delicate eyes, organs like your eyes and your ears. And I have blocked ears as well, and a bit of an issue after a thing. And they do them into the point where my ears are really sensitive, and it can be quite painful. There's times where I've literally jumped out of my seat. I've been fine. And again, the pattern of this is you can be, apart from the general, tracking, you can be fine 1 second, then all of a sudden these random and weird combination of patterns can happen out of nowhere, or they can just happen out of the blue and then go. And the patterns are too wide and too varied and too consistent with other victims of mind control to be discredited. We know from 31 scientists who've come out now and said this, 31 doctors who've come out and said these abuses are real and they're going on, and 4 medical doctors who've come out and said that these abuses are real. You know, do your research and you'll find out. 2 psychiatrists have come out and said this is real. This is getting exposed. But anyway, back to my testimony. So confusion. This is one of the hardest things, making decisions, and they make it to a point where it's not just the mind control, but it's the thought oppression, where you literally cannot. You're trying to think and to bring that thought into materialization in your brain, but you literally cannot think. You're trying, because the microwaves are interfering with the electromagnetics in your brain that severely, you literally cannot form thought. So I call this thought oppression. And this is different to the thought control, where they're actually, manipulating the brain. There is an initial effect of a thought oppression, where a lot of the time you cannot even think, because the microwaves are affecting the electromagnetics of your brain that badly. And if you think about it, it makes sense. They're using electromagnetics to affect the electromagnetics of your brain, because you're an electromagnetic being, and this is how it works. So this creates a lot of confusion and thought oppression. This tracking, but also the pulsating frequencies into your head, into these different areas, and on the back and the top of the head and the back of the neck and the brow, the sides, in and around the ears. Get a lot of it in and around the ears. I get the stronger stuff coming from the left, and the V2K from the left. A lot of that comes through the left. You feel it come down from certain angles. You feel the itching on the top of the head as the tracking and the frequency at the top of the head. Yeah, it's just living your whole life feeling uncomfortable with these symptoms and these sensations. It's honestly, I would not wish it on anyone. It's horrible. It's really, really horrible. Thought suppression, depersonalization, or this is where you don't feel like you're in your body, and this is another thing that does it. It can create dissociation, which again we're seeing the connection with the old MK Ultra techniques that the CIA did in the 1970s. It seems from my research to be an extension of that, where they can create this dissociation, or this depersonalization, where you don't feel like you're in the body and you just want to dissociate, and that's how they create a controllable victim or a mind control slave. Luckily, I'm a bit stronger than that, and I'm able to counter it because I've got knowledge of personal development. I'm very aware, mindful, astute person, but for some people, they're just being wiped out with this technology, and just totally, they're in a state of dissociation the whole time. Memory loss. As I said before, they can control the short-term memory and interfere with the short-term memory, where you're on a thought train, or say I've had a client, and then all of a sudden, I can't think, I can't say anything for about 10 seconds. And this has been really embarrassing, where it happened to me earlier in this video, where all of a sudden I lost my train of thought and I could not remember anything that I'd just been speaking about. And they've also able to do this like over more of a long term. I remember one time, the worst that ever happened to me was when I was walking around the supermarket, and I could feel it gradually just getting worse, and the symptoms the microwave energy getting stronger and stronger into my head, and I could not make sense of anything. I didn't even I kind of had a vague idea of why I was there, but I just did not know the what, the why, the where, the how of the situation, or where I was going next, what I wanted to buy. It was ridiculously strong, and it took me about 10 to 15 minutes to slowly start to come around to it. And I still, left the supermarket still feeling like that, but it was really shocking, like what they could do to me in an instant. And I felt this many times, but that was the strongest example of that I remember, where it was like they affected my memory process that strongly, in my mind that strongly. They're also able to affect your long-term memory, where you can't recall things as well, or Say, for example, like many times I've tried to learn information about the targeting, about these weapons and the evidence and that, and I've tried to commit them to long-term memory, and even when I've gone over it many times, I'm still not able to recall it, and I can tell that there's been a process of interfering with my long-term memory and kind of trying to make me believe it's something else, to try and change my belief pattern or my conclusions around that, to make it really difficult to know the research and the conclusions that I've drawn in and around this. Luckily, with time, I've been able to become very solid and accurate with my research, and in terms of gaining a picture of what's going on. This has been very, very challenging in terms of trying to ascertain exactly what the credible sources are and exactly what the situation is, having to piece it, trying to piece a difficult situation and topic together with accounts became even more challenging. But gradually I got there. But this was because my memory process, my long-term memory processes, and my conclusions and my beliefs about this, and my beliefs about myself, but that's another issue, were being interfered with. It took a long time for me to really build up that structure and that realistic comprehension about what exactly was going on with me and what exactly was going on generally with this topic. Although now I feel very confident in terms of what the research that I've done and the conclusions that I've reached. So, overwhelming hot flashes. Well, this is not really surprising considering this is microwave energy that's being directed at you, because microwaves heat things. As you know from a microwave, when you are heating your food, it heats the food. Well, it's the same with a human being. This is effectively cooking an individual. It can cook your organs and your bodies, depending where it's being directed at. It can cook that area, and which is not a nice thought. But this is effectively what they're doing: is they're slowly killing you. It's a slow kill program. Effectively, these weapons are not non-lethal, as the intelligence and military like to claim. They're actually very lethal, and there's a lot of science that is backing this. They knew everything about the harmful effects of microwave, according to Dr. Barry Trower, whistleblower Dr. Barry Trower, an ex-MI5 spy in the 1970s, and the harmful effects it had. The government knows all about this. This is, it's undeniable that microwaves can create these debilitating effects. But anyway, they create these hot flashes, and 1 minute you can be absolutely fine, 1 second you can be fine, and the next minute you feel it come in, and you are burning. You are just so overwhelmingly hot. And they can also create the cold flushes as well, where you get very, very cold all of a sudden. And they're able to do that, through the microwave technology. And it's very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable when you get these hot flashes, these overwhelmingly hot flashes out of nowhere, and they can create amnesia, as I said, where you forget things. They can create dizziness as well. This is one of the symptoms that the diplomats had, the US diplomats, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, where you just feel generally out of balance, because a lot of the frequencies are focused in and around the inner ear and the is it the vestibular? I think it's the vestibular and the cochlea. Well, this inner ear is the area of the balance, isn't it? So when they're affecting this part of the ear, it can create dizziness, and it can make you feel off balance, and it can affect your coordination. So this is one of the reasons behind that. But just generally, when you're getting frequencies directed into your head all the time, or a lot of the time, in an intense way, it can make you feel dizzy generally, and it's awful. Yeah, it's awful. So they can create false tinnitus sounds through the microwave auditory effect, especially when it's in and around the ear areas, which I've already spoken about. They can create less awareness or consciousness. So it's almost like you have a less, say you've got a certain amount of consciousness to do your tasks during the day, you're at a certain level of spiritual awareness. The effect of these weapons can diminish your consciousness, your level of awareness, your level of concentration, to the point where you're just less aware and you have less usable consciousness in order to succeed or do the everyday, day-to-day tasks that you're trying to do in your life. You know, and this is one of the challenging things, is that they're constantly diminishing your level of usable consciousness. They can make you itch, and they've done this to me many, many times, where I just have severe itching in, you know, like in certain parts of my body. A lot of it is around this area or this side of the head, you know, where a lot of it comes in very strong, but also like my elbows and my hands, you know, in other areas of my body, you know, where they create these sometimes it's like it sustains, like a sustaining itch, and other times it's more like just you know, like a random itch, or almost like a side effect of the general microwave energy coming into the body. But it's you know, these sometimes they will take something that is on its own is not that bad, but when done consistently, day in, day out, over a period of time, grinds down the individual. And I've experienced this myself with this technology. Grinds you down bit by bit and has an overall devastating effect on your life. And this is what they're trying to do. It's the harassment, the constant harassment, and the constant directed energy attacks, and the constant mind tricks, trying to break you down as an individual, neutralize every area of your life, so that you won't speak out, and so that you won't tell the truth. But we will keep speaking out, we will tell the truth, and we will say what's going on, and we will be recognized for what we have been through. That I do know, and that I promise. So they've also caused directed energy weapons on my heart, where they've created my heartbeat to go really, really fast and race. It's like they know the specific point of my heart, or area of my heart, to stimulate that neurologically, to beat fast. The thing is they're able to do some of this stimulation directly through the directed energy weapons to certain points. So, for example, when they stimulate your bowel or stimulate you to want to go for a wee, to urinate, they can stimulate them places exactly. But they've also, I've noticed, they're able to stimulate things through the areas of the brain. So they're able to pinpoint this technology with incredible accurateness onto stimulate certain parts of your brain that are related to, for example, sexual arousal. And then all of a sudden you'll feel sexually aroused because they're doing it to your brain. You know, they're stimulating that part of your brain that is connected to sexual arousal. But they can also sexually arouse you, for example, via your genitals, and do it in that way directly. So I've noticed that they're able to do it in both of these ways, and seemingly in coordination as well. But you know, it's real. You know, this is terrible. You know, it's electronic rape what they've done to me. You know, they directed energy weapons into my genitalia and my anus, and pains in these areas because of that, and trying to turn me on sexually, you know, artificially with this weaponry. You know, it's horrible, and many of the victims are complaining of the same things. All of these symptoms the victims are complaining about. You know, these are symptoms across the board. And okay, everyone's targeting varies a little bit, but this is a global program, and we can see this from the symptoms that are going on. So direct energy weapons attacks on my heart, you know, back in the day I thought that was a symptom of just anxiety, but I didn't realize it was being stimulated in me, you know. And I know now through my intensive research, you know, and the random patterns and the patterns of these microwaves, connecting it to other people, the effect of microwaves, the effect of microwave weapons, the effect of the patents, and comparing and corroborating with all these different areas exactly what is going on. I know the similarities, I know what has been stimulating, causing anxiety, and I know what has affected these weapons directly. So this is something that psychiatry and psychologists and mental health need to know the difference between, if you're watching this video, is to know the difference between what is a genuine mental health illness and what is these weapons, what is directed energy weapon attacks, what is neuro weapon attacks. Nausea, radiation sickness. I felt incredible nausea numerous times from these directed energy weapon attacks. And almost like a feeling of radiation sickness, the best way that I can describe it. I've actually been sick once. They actually stimulated me to be sick. You know, I said they can stimulate certain parts of the body. Well, I was actually sick once, and I know other people have had sick where they've been sick many times and they've triggered them to be sick. It's just barbaric. It's the worst human rights abuse of the 21st century, without a doubt. And I hope the person viewing this is still viewing this with an open mind and an open heart, and listening to what I'm saying, really just taking it on board, not judging, but just being willing to learn and being willing to know what is going on, the victim and the things that are being done to harass, you know, what are effectively your brothers and sisters, you know, the wider human family. You know, you could be someone in your family could be affected, someone, one of your best friends could be affected, you could be affected with this. So, you know, and it's happening to normal people, credible people, good people, intelligent people. Lots of doctors and people, whistleblowers and people in the military and intelligence have all been targeted. Not all of them, but many of them have found themselves, or a good number of them at least, have been targeted with these weapons, to, you know, because they've known something too much, or they've got on the wrong side of someone, or because they're intelligent and they know stuff, or they're bringing out some technology which the government doesn't want them to bring out because they want to make money on another technology. Radiation, sickness, nausea, inability to concentrate, think, or get anything done. Well, I've kind of covered this one already. But this is one of the worst symptoms. You know, if you destroy someone's ability to concentrate, you destroy their ability to do absolutely everything in their life, because everything comes from mind. Everything comes from your state of consciousness and your ability to think from moment to moment in the moment. So, regarding the tiredness, they will also try and put me to sleep when I'm at work. So it's like hell trying to stay awake. They're able to create false created smells inside you, which is like, there's been times where I've been in the middle of nowhere and I've smelled things. I've smelled things that I could not possibly have smelled in the middle of nowhere, and this is being recreated because I could feel, you know, the effects of the frequency. This is being recreated with the neuro weaponry to make me feel that, to make me smell that. So again, it comes back to they can recreate anything that you could think or feel through your senses, or see in your mind's eye, hear inside your own head, inside, they can recreate with the weaponry, including getting you to think that you are smelling something that's coming from outside of you, but actually you're smelling, it's being recreated through the neurotechnology, through the neuro weapons, because it's in connection with your brain, because they're using that neurotechnology on your brain through the weaponry. So, suppression of personality and emotions. Well, I mean, they basically, you know, I've always been a very enthusiastic person, you know, a very expressive person, and I've really had to build myself back up. But I think, you know, there's times where my personality, and still even today, has been so devastated, you know, like become very dissociated and just no life, you know, at times, you know, and I've worked really hard and I've got, you know, quite a lot of that back, you know, and I'm bringing some of that back, but still I'm nowhere near what I should be, you know, because of the devastating effects on my emotions and personality, you know, and my ability to express myself, speak out, and live in my personal power, you know, has been affected so severely with the effect of these weapons. So, financial loss through mind control program. Well, there's been many times where I've had a client and I've just cancelled on them because I've been getting some symptom that's been too intense, or that I thought I've been ill, or I've just been too fearful to see them. But there have been other times where literally they were keeping me down, making me think that I had some kind of flu symptom, but they were recreating these symptoms and these feelings, and they're even able to make you cough and things like that and sneeze. You know, it's crazy what they can do. And they were making me think that I had the flu, and that and eventually it got to about day 10, and I'd taken 10 days off, and I realized what they were doing to me, and I realized that the only way that I could break out was by literally breaking out of it and going back to work. And then as soon as I did and I broke that pattern, the algorithms start to change and the patterns start to change, and I got back to my best within a couple of days, you know, even though before I was on my back. And the thing is, the worse it gets, the more the AI algorithms seem to pick up on that pain and then reprogram it back in and make it more intense and make it worse. And so the only way sometimes you can break out is by just totally just breaking out of it through action and just changing your focus, because the more that you focus on that, the more that the algorithms latch onto that pain and latch onto that pattern and push you into further pain and further, you know, in this case it was creating like a false flu in me, where I was just so lethargic and I felt so lack of energy, and I felt I had like pressure in my head, I had headache, I had like coughing, I had like tightness in my chest. They were able to do all of this, and they've done this to me on many occasions. I'm not saying many with the flu thing, but they've done this to me at least, you know, 3 or 4 times where I was, you know, I thought I was going through a genuine flu, and even though I knew a bit about the you know, that I was being influenced at the time, I still was not able to fully appreciate that at the time and to understand that they were able to do all of this to me with this technology. And so anyway, financial loss, that's basically financial loss through the programming, and also sensory deprivation. One of the things that they do is to affect your relationships and also with the opposite sex, and that's one way that they, and through the isolation, that they take that element of touch that's so essential for any human being out of your life, because through that isolation and through them destroying your ability to meet a partner, potential partner, they are able to deprive you of that everyday normal sensory thing called touch that's so important. You know, if babies don't have a sense of touch, you know, it's said that they'll die, you know, if they don't get that touch when they're young. It's so important. And this is one of the things that they do, is not just deprive you of basic human touch, but also deprive you of enjoying your life, or being able to get out and enjoy your life and meet friends, because they isolate you and mind control you to stay in the house and to be in fear and to be afraid of going out and be afraid of people and to think that person manipulating, all of this bullshit. This is one of the ways that they deprive your senses, you know, that experience of life, you know, where you can experience joy and pleasure through any of your senses, through your ears, through your smell, through your nose, through your taste, through the feeling sense, through the body, through generally your emotions and your experience. You can experience all of this, you know, by generally living your life and trying lots of things, you know, visual things, hearing things, music, sensing things, and they deprive you of that by keeping you in a state of fear and paralysis and not being able to go out and do these things and to live your life and enjoy your life. Okay, another one is overloading of memory, because there's so much information coming in that you're unable to, your memory is unable to, your memory is not able to, they're doing it now, they're interfering with my memory now, they're not able to you're not able to, your memory's not able to function in that way, in an efficient way. So synthetic sexual arousal, we talked about that, and this is rape. This amounts to rape. You know, doesn't matter whether it's physical or not. Someone is doing that and is invading your private areas. This amounts to rape, and this needs to come out. This needs to come out. What has been going on? These torturous methods they've been using to people. You know, it has huge psychological effect on people. These things. You know, I'm lucky in some ways that I know these skills of mindfulness, and I'm a strong individual, and that, well, these people have rocked my world and put me into so much amount of trauma with this technology, even despite, some of the tools I've had to counter this, and some of the pain I've been through has been just intense, crazy. So, hypersensitivity, that's another one. So I remember when this first happened to me, I had a huge sensitivity to light, and I was in Australia at the time, and I was so sensitive to light that I just, it was hurting my eyes, and I still get this hypersensitivity now, to sounds, where I just can't stand sounds. I just don't want any sounds around me, and it's more than just wanting peace of mind. There's hypersensitivity to feelings even, where your feelings feel really sensitive because they're pulsing so much electromagnetics through the body, through the microwaves, that your body feels really sensitive to anything. So hypersensitivity is another one that people complain of, and I've experienced. Spontaneous tearing. So there have been times where I felt like I've had so much emotion in me, and so much sadness, and so much that I wanted to let out through crying, and I've not been able to do it. And there have been other times where I've felt as though I've wanted to cry, and because it's been running this program on me, and yet most of the time still I've not been able to cry. There have been some times where I've cried, where either I've just cried naturally because I've been upset about what's been going on, or because they've stimulated this in me. But there have been other times where, I'm literally, I want to cry, I want to let it out, I want to release that, and I've not been able to. I've not been able to, because normally it's like a gradual process of you're thinking that way, you're feeling that way, you're feeling that way, and it happens. But because there's been so much interference with that process, that natural process has not been allowed to happen because of the misdirection and the changing of your thoughts and emotion through the mind control. That natural allowing of that crying has not been allowed to happen, and that's actually quite detrimental on yourself, that when you can't feel like you can let emotions out in that way. Also, horrible high pressure and pulsing in my ears. Like I said, I've had a blockage in my ears, and I've a lot of the microwaves come in and around this area, around the ears, because they work via the cochlea, especially the V2K. So some of the mind control, the V2K, works in and around the ears, but they also, whether they're doing this, they're definitely doing deliberately at times, but there are times where it's being done indirectly in and around this area, and there are times where they are pulsing into this area intensely, or doing the sharp stinging shots into my ear through these high frequency shots into my ear, which is giving me very horrible either pain or high pressure or pulsing in my ears, like a constant pulsing into my ears, microwave auditory effect into my ears. And also jerking and trembling. They're able to stimulate your muscles so that you jerk. And also I've had it where they're able to make you tremble. Like one of the early symptoms that was very prominent for me was where I would all of a sudden be overcome with a sense of doom, like like, you know, like an apocalyptic sense of doom, that my life was over, and that any sense of joy was banished from my life from this moment forward. It was literally that horrible, this feeling of doom. And they used to make my legs tremble at the same time. There was a feeling of weakness and trembling in my legs, which I know they're able to create because I can feel how it's being done with the microwave weapons, with the technology, the neurotechnology, the directed energy weapons, and yeah, they're able to make you tremble and even shake across your body. You know, I've had at times where they've made my body shake with an intense anxiety. I've had like this tense feeling of anxiety, and my body is kind of shaking, and they're able to. It's like they're able to recreate everything, like mentally and physically at the same time in coordination, to create this effect. It's not just a physical thing, it's not just a mental thing, but they're able to do both in combination. This is what my experience has been anyway. Yeah, like I said, feelings of dread, feelings of like a real sense of doom, like an unexplainable fear out of nowhere and for no reason, not even connected to the way that I'm thinking or the way that I was feeling previously or in general. Feelings of disconnection from everything. Well, this goes along with the dissociation and depersonalization of feeling dissociated from yourself and depersonalized from your own body or out of your own body. This feeling of disconnection is horrible. And what they're literally doing is they're literally this is an attack on the human soul. This has been an attack on my soul. As part of living life, you want to feel connected. You want to feel connected to life. So feeling that disconnection and then also disconnecting and depersonalizing as a result of trauma, consistent and daily trauma, is that I find myself dissociating throughout the day, and I have to remind myself to stop. Although sometimes it seems like the most viable solution, because there's only so much the mind and the body and the emotions can take. And sometimes it seems like dissociating, even if it's being forced, is the only way that you can remain grounded and remain in that center point and remain strong. So, and I hope you can see that I'm telling you this all very mindfully from my own perspective, and that I'm very careful with my words in terms of what I'm saying, to make sure that I'm saying as accurately as possible. And so this is an official testimonial for the record. You can use this testimony. I don't care, so long as you get the word out. You know, this testimony is for everybody to use. Maybe give you the strength to speak out and say your own testimony. So I'm going to try and be a little bit quicker now, because this is there's a lot I need to get through. So this is called trauma-based mind control, and this is a thing. This has been a thing from intelligence services and the CIA, and even the Nazi scientists who went to America and across the world from Project Paperclip. They were developing this technology in the 1920s. If you do your research, you'll understand that this is true, and that there is a long history behind these abuses. The whole idea is to create trauma and to create neutralization of the target, either for political purposes, or because you've got on the wrong side of someone, or whatever, or because you're someone who is deemed undesirable by the government, because you're a free thinker, a free speaker, you're an empowered of individuals. And I'll get on more about this into why I think that I've been targeted. But basic to say, the whole thing is about trauma and neutralization, and even using an individual in order to do their willing and bidding, or what they call a Manchurian candidate. And this is very real. People need to wake up. People need to wake up as to what's going on. So, character assassination. Well, they've done this directly both through mind controlling myself, and I believe through also destroying my name through patterns and mind controls, which I believe they may have done to other people as well, to destroy my reputation and my name. Also, one of the things that they've done, I've talked about this before, is they can impersonate demons or extraterrestrials, angels, Jesus, God, via the mind control. They can give the false impression, say for example you're a religious person, you're a Christian, that Jesus is speaking to you and that Jesus is guiding you, or that God is guiding you, or if you're more into the spirituality of the New Age, they might use like an angel or something, like Archangel Gabriel or something. And it's unbelievable, and you know, I wouldn't have believed this one personally had I not experienced it myself and understand the devastating effect that this technology and this specific technique that they use and you can have. They can make you believe that you're possessed, and I did for a while because I didn't understand that this was a technological thing that was being done to me. So I even went and had to a Christian person that did what do they call it, deliverance, and I also did deliverance scripts for myself off the internet. It didn't make any difference because this is what not was going on. I mean, don't get me wrong, I believe in spiritual cleaning and the spiritual world as well. I believe that is, you know, that you can get rid of these things and people can get attached with these things, but this was not what I was experiencing. And I proved everything through my own experience. I proved that it was not anxiety because I did everything to the nth degree: my diet, my exercise, my meditation, my affirmations, my positive way of thinking. Everything was changed to the nth degree, and yet I still didn't overcome it all these years. You know, and I did everything on the spiritual level to clean myself, to make sure that this wasn't an attachment or something, you know, like, you know, something demonic or like some kind of entity or being that was affecting me. I did everything. I ruled that out, you know, and for people hearing me speak like this, you know, I'm speaking like this because I'm a very spiritual individual, so you know, this is my perspective. But if you are hearing this and you're not spiritual, then just hear me out. You know, this is my perspective, and it shows how I gradually came through these and eliminated everything as well to gain the understanding of what the real truth was about what was going on and how this was a technological thing that was happening to me. So yeah, they've had this thing where I'm speaking to someone and they get my eyes to look away. It's one way that they try to stop you communicating with people effectively, to make you nervous and look away. Because if someone's looking away constantly when you're speaking to them, all of a sudden they don't want to speak to you as much anymore because you're not making that eye connection, you're not making that connection. And this was just another little thing that they've often done to me to try and get me to ruin my relationships. And also in terms of my face as well, in terms of like, you know, controlling my face to try and make it look more miserable or whatever, you know, or make it appear in a certain way, you know, with all my emotions that are behind that, so that I come across in a way that is not relating in the way that I want to. Lost time. Here's another one. Is sometimes it can feel like, you know, that you're sitting there and you're trying. I can sit there like, you know, sometimes half an hour, 2 hours sometimes without being able to do anything because I'm not able to overcome the sheer force of the mind control that's being exerted to me, the sheer thought oppression, which has stopped me even being able to bring thoughts into my conscious awareness and then decide that is what I want to do, either because my mind is just getting too many microwaves or too many frequencies in it, or I'm getting so much interference that I cannot make a decision, stick to that decision, and then move forward and do what I need to do now. And so there are times where, as part of that, where you just get lost time. It's like lost time where, you know, you can get like half an hour go by and it's like, and then you look back and think, like, I can't believe like I'm still searching through Google or YouTube now and doing this totally irrelevant thing that's not important, or like, I can't believe that I'm still sitting here. And it feels as though you've just lost like 10, 15, half an hour of your time, an hour of your time, because you've been under that hypnosis, you know, that programming. Body mutilation. Well, I wouldn't exactly call it body mutilation necessarily that I've had, but I have had physical damage from minor burns, I said earlier, on my body, and I believe that I may have had some long-term effect to my brain. I've just had an MRI scan and I'm awaiting the result of that. I will type the result of that on the description when I've got the result of that, but I need to make sure that this hasn't done anything to my brain over the long term, so I'm investigating things on a scientific basis to try and get the evidence for that, you know, for if there has been any damage from this to my body. I've had directed energy attacks on my ribs and bones, and they're able to like pulse certain frequencies into a certain area, like continuously into a certain spot. So for example, they did this to my ribs and my bones, where I thought that I had like an ongoing fracture that wasn't healing in my bones, and I wasn't able to play sport. And then eventually I realised what was done was that they had created that sensation continuously in my body, or like it would kind of come and go at times as well, but then the ache would come back, and I was like, oh god, I've moved in a certain way, I've done some exercise, and now it's really painful again, it's never going to heal. And you know, they were able to do this and make me feel that I had like a fractured bone that wasn't healing for ages, and I had a weakness in my bones, in my body. And so this was really uncomfortable and stopped me exercising. That's another thing they try and do, is stop you exercising, stop you from being healthy, stop you from, you know, anything, you know, and the ways that they've done this are endless, you know, from giving you pains, from mentally mind controlling you to not doing it, to making you tired, to putting you to sleep, to making you think other like meaningless things are more important. It just goes on, you know. There's many different ways that they've done this to me. I've had bone pain. I've had eye pains. I've had eye blurring, where they've directed it straight into my eyes, and I've had blurring. Again, you've got to think to yourself, the average person, they don't have random pains going on in and around their whole body in random ways, that come and go in random ways, and that stay in random amounts of time, and then just go completely, and then, you know, maybe in a year or so, you know, it'll happen again, or like, you know, a week or a month down the line, you know. The patterns are too random, they're too inconsistent to anything medical science has ever been able to document, and especially across the scale of it. You know, the symptomology is so random and varied from one point of view to one emotion to one experience to it's what these people have done in the name of science is criminal, and these people need locking up, you know, and lawsuits will happen. These people will go to, hopefully these people will be reprimanded. So I used to be a person that was good at sport, for example. I was very naturally good at sport, and I lost the ability to do this, you know, to have that good coordination that I used to have when I would play sport. You know, after this happened to me, my ability to play sport was seriously diminished through the lack of coordination. You know, things like the effect of the dizziness, you know, the interference, everything, you know, really diminished my ability to play sport. And generally my sense of coordination and dexterity. They can make you lose balance as well, which is another symptom from the US diplomats, that the US diplomats suffered. At the heart of this is their ability to make you, with lack of their ability to stop you from concentrating. Because as I said, that's the heart of all of this, is stopping you from concentrating. You know, the harassment is 24/7, even when I sleep, and when I work, when I'm trying to do my activism. You know, when I get home from work in particular, all of a sudden they try and put me to sleep. You know, it's very coordinated and precise, you know, the attacks and the psychological operations, you know, in relation to the periods of my day, you know, when I'm trying to be successful, when I'm trying to do well, when I'm trying to relate to someone well. It's very coordinated and very inconvenient, should we say, when these attacks are coordinated, or this mind control is coordinated to cause the maximum devastation to my life. They can make you cough, like I said earlier. They can create coughing attacks and trance-like states, and also circadian rhythm manipulation, where, like I say, they can put you to sleep during the day and then make you very active at like 2 till 4 in the morning, when you're supposed to be in the most, you know, your body's supposed to be in the most relaxed state. But what I was saying is, sometimes they may be able to have an effect where they can make you not concentrate for just a split moment or something, which is just enough to make you have an accident, for example. So this is what other people reported to me, basically, although I never had personally had a car accident from it. And I generally feel in control. I'm a very mindful driver when I drive, and very in control, but it's you have to just be a little bit more aware, you know. So they can create negative habits, like, for example, around spending money, which can obviously be very destructive. They can, it's almost like the mind control, the AI technology that's behind this, because it's run by artificial intelligence computers, artificial intelligence software programs that are run on supercomputers, according to whistleblower testimony. For example, Brian Coffrey was a whistleblower who talked to us, a private security whistleblower who talked about this. And it's almost like, and this is my understanding also, that the mind control is able to almost like it's intelligent technology that knows your weaknesses, or knows the situations and the thoughts and the areas of your life that are areas of vulnerability, and it's able to exploit them to really bring you down negative trains of thought and negative emotions and negative and into potentially negative actions and situations. So one of the other things that is part of the harassment that is part of this technology, and may have times, you know, I believe come from actual human beings using synthetic telepathy upon me, is I've had some really sick-minded focuses on my body, you know, like in terms of sexual focuses and kind of, you know, saying, oh, we like you and things like that, you know, trying to make out that they were sexual. And of course I have nothing against that, but when it's being used as me, you know, against homosexuality, when it's being used on me, and when I'm not that way inclined, you know, it's very disturbing to think that you know, I mean, especially if you know that this synthetic telepathy does go on with human operators as well, that is possible and that does happen. I think that could be individuals doing that. You know, not all of this is from the artificial intelligence. As I said, some of it is done via humans, according to whistleblowers such as Dr. Robert Duncan, who's come out about this. So it's all very disturbing. I remember as well as what they, when I was like, you know, they do something called thought broadcasting as well, where they're able to make you think other people are broadcasting thoughts into you or something, or like, and you know, this is another thing that would traditionally be called mental illness, and is a symptom probably, or could be a symptom of mental illness, but this is something they're also able to do via the technology, which is just another example of how they use that technology and disguise it and do things in the same way that a mental illness would have, that would come out from a mental illness. that would be part of a mental illness, so to speak. I mean, you could also say as well, because they've been using these directed energy weapons into my genitalia, that is effectively a form of sterilization and eugenics. And this whole thing is a slow kill program, because it slowly kills you with electromagnetic and degrades your brain and parts of your body. It's not nice to think that you're being slowly cooked to death with microwaves, and that so many people are suffering with this. They're taking your God-given gift from God of free will, and they're taking that away, and your ability to create and manifest as a free conscious human being, as a spiritual being. They're taking that away from you. And they're also taking that ability away to spiritually evolve and to just feel peace of mind, more than anything, just to feel peace of mind, and have a quiet, and feel that quietude and that stillness inside, which is why after being a victim for this for 14 years, at least, I really, really crave that, I really crave that peace of mind. Slowly over the years, I've managed to, these cycles of, in some ways, I've managed to overcome some of these cycles, but in some ways, this mind control has become stronger, and it's almost like the AI technology is constantly learning and evolving ways to neutralize you and to devastate your life, and it's very sick. Whoever, the people that have invented these technologies and patented this technology, which you can research about, it's very sick how they've such intelligent people, such intelligence has gone into making something that is so soul destroying and so devastating to an individual's brain, mind, consciousness and being. So it's pretty much all I've got to say on the symptoms, but yeah, it's has to be said that it's not been easy. It's not been easy, and I think just as much as anything is the frustration of feeling stuck and not feeling you can move forward, and then feeling paralysed by fear, not just because of the effect that they're trying to inducing you through the false synthetic emotions, but also just generally from feeling stuck and feeling paralysed in that. It's so debilitating, and anyway, one thing I'd like to point out at this point is, after doing my my testimonial, that the study that was done to find out the symptoms and the physiological difficulties as well that the US diplomats in Cuba and China had, it was an extensive study, and I went into the study and I wrote down the main symptoms and physiological problems, and every single one of them, innocent victims of neuro weapons and microwave weapons are complaining of. And you will have heard me mention pretty much all of these in what I've just said in my testimonial. I may have said it in a slightly different way, but if I go through this list, you will probably be able to compare it back to what I've already said and make that connection. This is not just a case of a few diplomats in, you in Cuba or China, US diplomats. This is going on globally now to millions of people across the world. Okay, so these are the symptoms that the study found that the diplomat had, and I'll go through this real quick just to give you an idea. Feeling mentally foggy. Yep, feeling mentally impaired concentration. Feeling cognitively slowed. Neurobehavioral difficulties, including irritability. Now, yeah, that's something that's similar as well. Neurobehavioral difficulties, nervousness, feeling more emotional, sadness, change in work performance, auditory and visual memory, impairment of motor function, impairments in visual spatial perception and visual motor construction, impairments in auditory attention and working memory, impairments in language and reasoning, individuals noted apathy, post-traumatic stress disorder, severe levels of anger, depression, anxiety, acute nausea, dizziness, reported visual problems, light sensitivity, difficulty reading, ear pain, tinnitus. Individuals commonly report issues with sleeping, including reduced noise, reduced sleep duration and difficulty falling asleep, significant daytime fatigue, the initiation of directed phenomena exposure. Individuals reported immediate onset of headaches, reported intense head pressure. Well, remember what I said earlier about all of a sudden getting directional phenomena or coming down very intensely in the different areas. That's the directional phenomena they're talking about. It's the frequencies that are being directed at them coming in from a certain angle. Within days to week following exposure, individuals continue to report tinnitus and ear pain with the addition of a change in hearing and sensitivity to noise. Difficulty remembering. Generally, the issues could be summed up as hearing, visual, sleep, balance, cognitive/mood disorders, and headache and pressure-related problems in the head. Exactly what I've just described to you as my symptoms. Exactly. In fact, every single one of them I have experienced, and many other victims have experienced. Well, this is a common thread amongst victims of microwave weapon assaults, remote neuro weapon assaults. So there's no point in me trying to, overemphasize even that this is going on. This is something that you, as a listener, need to do the research and find out for yourself and see the connections without it being forced upon you or shoved down your throat. Because there's nothing I can do, other than just put my truth out there to explain the situation. Whether you believe that or not, whether this is within your capability, whether you even allow that in as a possibility, is up to you. It depends whether you value the truth or not. That's what it comes down to. Anyway, moving on. So, this needs to be stopped, this needs to be stopped. So now I'm going to go into who is behind this, who I think is behind this, and I'm going to give like an overview of the situation and give where I'm at the moment. And firstly, to come off and say that I don't 100% know who is behind this. I have some evidence, and I have my suspicions. But to say 100% that I know behind this would not be truthful, because I don't fully know 100% who is behind this yet. I suspect I know who is behind this, and I will explain my reasoning for that. And I'm 99%, or should I say 95% sure that this is the case, but I don't know for 100. I'm still collecting my evidence, and I think I've got a case mounting, but I can't be 100% sure. So the people who I think are behind this is Menwith Hill. It's a NSA base, or an American base. It's American run, despite claiming that it's British run as well. It's predominantly an American run base. They even have American cinemas in there, and bowling, American bowling and everything, apparently. And I believe they are the most, considering all the evidence that I have, including some testimonies that I have. So why do I think this is Menwith Hill? I believe, firstly let's look at the facts and have a little bit of information here just to prompt my memory, because I wrote this down in a very precise way. So Menwith Hill is the biggest electronic monitoring station in the world. So we've established there that they are exactly in the right area of expertise to monitor individuals' brainwave patterns through remote neural monitoring, or RNM, and intercept and survey data and electronics, which is well documented that they do through SIGINT intelligence. So from the starting point of remote neural monitoring, they can then carry out the electronic harassment and the mind control, etc. So Menwith Hill is also surrounded in controversy. They are said to have little or no oversight from the UK government, which is why they get at least 2 activist groups regularly making protests outside their base, such as the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament and the Menwith Hill Accountability Campaign. And they basically operate as a country within the UK, a US country within the UK. It's like a separate country apparently. Apparently actually has separate citizenship. I'm not sure if that's 100% true, but this is what I heard. I can't verify that, but they also have massive microwave radomes, microwave transmitters in the form of microwave radomes, and the radomes cover up the microwave transmitters, and so they have the technology, and lots of it, very powerful, technology, in order to carry out these attacks and generally intercept data from wherever they want, whether it be a human mind or whether it be someone's computer or a phone signal. The technology they have is just incredible. They have the equipment. They have satellite capabilities from the US Air Force. The US Air Force, who have the biggest amount of satellites in the world, according to my understanding. They also have been known for controversial and excessive killings in regions across the world, using drone attacks to assassinate people, reportedly with inadequate discrimination, according to the following article from Lifting the Lid at Menwith Hill. So basically what I'm trying to make out is they're an organisation that's already shrouded in unethical behaviour, and many, you would almost call them mainstream writers, such as Glenn Greenwald, for example, are writing about about Menwith Hill and exposing it for what it is, and how unethical it is. So you've got to think that if an organisation is that unethical, then they wouldn't probably hesitate to do other things along that line. For example, the problem is with this, it's all done under the guise of national security, but a lot of it is just about simple control, and especially with what I'm talking about. So also, and here's the really revealing stuff. There was a guy called Tevon Rivers, who was an American engineer who worked at Menwith Hill up until 2006. When he left Menwith Hill, he subsequently started to receive electronic harassment almost as soon as he ended his post. This account is not dissimilar to many other accounts of people who have worked for military and intelligence agencies, and when they left, they become victims of electronic harassment. In Tevon's words, he says that he found out that other engineers had also become victims of this, who had left Menwith Hill. Karen Melton Stewart, Dr. Robert Duncan, Brian Coffrin, and a ex-MI5 agent on Twitter, and Andy Lewis, our ex-intelligent military or private security specialist, who also got targeted after leaving service. These are only a few of the many examples of this trend that I have read about. Tevon Rivers states that he was encouraged to go back to the United States, and when he did not, then his targeting started shortly afterwards. He quotes how he came across a case where someone had taken Menwith Hill to court for similar abuses of electronic harassment. And there's the key nugget of wisdom, of evidence from what he said. He quotes how he came across a case where someone had taken Menwith Hill to court for similar abuses of electronic harassment. The man said that there is a team, this was the person who had the court case against Menwith Hill, and actually took this out apparently. The man said that there is a team up at Menwith Hill that are responsible for using this technology on local citizens. Apparently this document is online somewhere, and he's got a testimony on YouTube. I recommend all people watching this view his testimony. Just type in Tevon Rivers, like V2K testimony, Tevon Rivers, like targeted individual testimony into Google or YouTube. You may find it better on Google. Okay? And I also came across two other people specifically online who claim they are being targeted from Menwith Hill with mind control, electronic harassment. In reality, according to the site Project Freedom, Menwith Hill are the main site in the UK that carries out government mind control or intelligence mind control upon its citizens. We also need to look at the fact that the NSA and are the biggest spy surveillance organisation in the world, who are also based there, and also they have stations all around the world. Hence why whistleblower and common opinion amongst a lot of victims is that they are the central node or the central point behind all of this international surveillance network. They are the main organisation, if you like. Obviously it's interagency, there are a lot of agencies involved, but they are the main agency that are at the helm of this surveillance, and the surveillance is obviously at the core of these electronic assaults, because they need to survey an individual through remote neural monitoring before that they can carry out these operations upon an individual. So it's the NSA who are at Menwith Hill, and this in itself should raise alarm bells in terms of anyone else who is targeted in the local area. It certainly raised my alarm bells that when I kind of did my research and I found that the NSA were there, and also not so coincidentally the US Air Force are there, who, according to Richard Lighthouse, NASA whistleblower Richard Lighthouse, are also the biggest culprits behind this global program that he claims is essentially coming from the US. In reality, I think it's coming more from Five Eyes, with the US at the helm. But obviously, because Menwith Hill is essentially a US base on English soil, they still use these operations, in my opinion, according to my research, to use these weapons nationally and perhaps even internationally. So also GCHQ are there as well, the British equivalent of the NSA, and there is a small number of RAF there, but I think they're pretty much insignificant compared to obviously the US Air Force, who I believe are in there in much greater numbers according to my research. So it's worth being aware, it's worth raising the point that only a government agency would have technology this sophisticated, in my opinion. And the technology appears strongly to be used in the same way, or in similar ways causing similar symptoms in all targets internationally. There is so much similarity with target electronic harassment symptoms internationally that it's just mind-boggling when you draw these comparisons. So this is to do with the symptomology and the patterns that targets are experiencing. And this also suggests that the technology is largely, if not completely, centralized to the government and the intelligence agencies. This is opposed to private criminal gangs using whatever technology they can to get their hands on, and everyone's targeting most likely varying more. So it is worth noting that there is an abundance of evidence that it is the intelligence agencies, military and private security and intelligence companies that are the main perpetrators of this human rights abuse. Many credible whistleblowers have come out and said this. So I just want to say that even if it is, in my belief, Menwith Hill doing this, or let's just say another base doing this, another surveillance base, like another NSA base doing this, there is the chance that, although in my opinion it's less likely, that they are contracting this work out to private security or private intelligence agencies, because there have been a couple of whistleblowers and also some other documents I've read that give evidence to say that these days a lot of the work is subcontracted out to private corporations, i.e. private companies, security companies and private intelligence agencies. So there is the chance that this is being done to me. There's the chance that this is being done to me via the government, via the government's intelligence agencies, but it's actually being operated and orchestrated, i.e. these weapons are being used from a private security or private intelligence agency, either in the UK or abroad. And I don't have access to the 5 biggest subcontractors from the intelligence agencies, but I will post that in the link in the description below, because there are 5 companies that make up, I think it's about 80 to 90% of the contracting work from the government's intelligence agencies. And according to this article that I read, it was saying that most of the work is subcontracted out. So unless this is specific special ops, black ops, which they're doing from the intelligence agencies and not wanting it to, and it's too classified to subcontract out to the private security and intelligence agencies, there is a fair to good chance that this may be coming from a private security or intelligence agency that is being given the directions from the government's intelligence agencies. There is also the chance, and I think this is possibly even more remote of a chance, but it's definitely something that is happening according to my research, that this is purely a private security or intelligence agency, and that this was something that I was that somebody put me on against my free will. I will go into reasoning later on, but this seemed less likely to me. There is that possibility that I was put on a private security company or private intelligence agency harassment program. So these are the options that I'm exploring with you in this testimony, and the other main place where I think could be using these weapons against me is somewhere called Shriver Airforce Base in the USA, in Colorado. And this is a US Air Force base which whistleblower Richard Lighthouse, NASA whistleblower Richard Lighthouse, has done a lot of research, and he says that Shriver Air Force Base are behind the global targeted individual program. And I don't confess to have completely researched into everything he said, but what he's saying seems to make sense, and if what he's saying is correct, then it seems like credible, tangible information. So just to give you some of the reasoning why this could be Shriver Air Force Base behind this, I will go through some of the reasoning behind that. And there are many agencies involved. You know, it's you know, like the CIA, according to Richard Lighthouse, the CIA, Mossad, the Council of Foreign Relations, Black Ops through Dick Cheney. Go to the site rlighthouse.com, and you'll see some of his diagrams explaining how the program is done. The Office of Director of National Intelligence, the Department of Justice, the DIA, the DHS, the FBI, and so forth, DARPA. So Richard Lighthouse has lots of useful free ebooks on his website that give the reasoning behind this. It would be impossible, and it's beyond the scope of this video, to go into all the reasoning for that, but I suggest you check out his site, R Lighthouse, and his free ebooks on targeted individuals and on these satellite weapons. And these are the reasonings, I believe, for Shriver Air Force Base, because the US and the US Air Force own by far the largest majority of the world's satellites, and because the CIA agent and whistleblower Dr. Robert Duncan, who actually helped create mind control weapons, talks about these mind control programs. I know from my research that many of the target individuals worldwide are suffering from the same symptoms in the same way that he specifically describes. So this gives the relationship between the CIA and the US Air Force. And also my own research has pointed out that there's a lot of evidence to suggest the CIA are strongly behind these attacks as well. But you would assume that they would do it using the US Air Force, who have the control of the satellites, because this is done via satellite technology, that they would use one of the biggest Air Force bases, as Shriver Air Force Base is in the USA, to conduct these attacks. So, but the best evidence for this is to look at Richard Lighthouse's free books on targeted individuals. We also know that the USA has researched mind control extensively all over the USA in their 150 or so deep underground military bases, or DUMBs. And this is verified in one of the websites that I found by whistleblower Phil Schneider, who helped build most of these deep underground military bases. And he said the rest, i.e. the bases, were being used by military and civilians for biologic, chemical and mind control development. So, from whistleblower accounts, these bases were also in collaboration with DARPA, CIA and the US Air Force. Again, this is consolidated and bringing all of this evidence together. So this is where much of the research for this technology originates from, is this deep underground military bases, but also DARPA and also, according to my understanding, university research the CIA funded on mind control technology. So there are many US whistleblowers, and many of them are doctors of their fields, and that they know that the targeting program is going on in the US and are whistleblowing about the attacks in America. And this lends some credible truth that the US and the US Air Force are behind a lot of these attacks, because they have by far the highest proportion of whistleblowers and victims, even considering America is a very big country. So in reality, these assaults happen all over the world in concerning numbers. Also, the US have a history of mind control under the MKUltra scandal, where they did many mind control experiments against many people's free will. It was exposed and publicly documented. The US government then said that all mind control experiments had stopped. They hadn't. They continued under different names. MKUltra and mind control never stopped. It just went on more covertly behind the scenes, with the technology getting more and more sophisticated, and the US remaining as the best at mind control technology in the world by a long way. The sheer number of US victims, probably more proportionally than anywhere else in the world, is testimony to that. We can see from a website called Black Vault, which documents all the declassified documents from MKUltra, the extent to which the US has invested in this mind control technology for a long time. Actually, since the 1940s, according to Dr. Robert Duncan. But actually it went on before that, since the 1920s, according to some research that I've done recently. And I recommend checking out that site, the Black Vault, and even maybe doing a search for MKUltra or mind control, and you will see evidence of this, of mind control within that. And I believe there is some even outlining the remote mind control that I'm talking about within them declassified documents. And another thing is, while it's not a direct connection, it is worth being aware that Dr. Bill Deagle worked at Shriver Air Force Base, and he said that Shriver has more computer power than the rest of the world put together. So it would make sense to carry out the operations there based upon the fact that they've got so much computing power. Again, this is all just building up a picture, you know. There are some points which, on their own or are not defining evidence, but when you put them together, they start to build up a bigger picture and give some evidence and some reasoning why why Shriver Air Force Base are very likely involved in this, plus Richard E. House's evidence from his e-books as well. So, and one of the main things is that the US have bases stationed all around the world with microwave radomes technology, and a very high percentage of the world's satellites. This is another reason, pointing back to the US Air Force, who own a large percentage of the world's satellites. Please note that in relation to the US Air Force and NSA, I've already said this before, the US Air Force and NSA are also stationed at Menwith Hill, which is the second place that I believe could be doing this, which I've already talked about earlier, Menwith Hill. So, are we starting to see the connection here in terms of that we have the same perpetrators involved? We have the NSA, we have the US Air Force, we have the CIA, but then we also have other organisations as part of Five Eyes, such as GCHQ, MI5, MI6, and potentially even the RAF and the UK Army potentially as well are involved in this. So this is giving him my reasons behind these two places. As I said before, this could even be subcontracted out or even being done directly by an individual private security company or private intelligence agency, of which I will name the 5 main ones used for subcontracting work in the link below. So, like I said earlier, I don't know exactly who is doing this, but the greatest amount of evidence and coincidences as well, should we say, and logical reasoning is pointing quite significantly to Menwith Hill. So I'm stating this for the record, so that it is out there, and for my own security as well, because this will be investigated, I'm sure, and this will come to light. So that's all really I've got to say on that. My research. I know Carl Clark, whistleblower Carl Clark, who worked for the CIA and MI5 and Mossad as a organised stalker. He had access to these programs. He was in these special departments, as he called them, where they were using these weapons. And he said that he used to get recruited to actually stalk people, to do organised stalking with them. And he quotes that these private intelligence agencies, there are 400 small private intelligence agencies in the UK that are doing the work on behalf of the larger intelligence agencies. So I just thought I'd drop that in as well. before going on to the next part. So the next part is, why am I targeted? So the reason I think that I'm targeted, and I believe that many people are targeted, is because there are a few basic reasons. So if I just give some general overview first, some general reasons first, and then I go specifically into how these relate to me, I think that's going to be the easiest way to do it. So there are a few lines of thinking according to my research, and from speaking to many of the victims as well. I've corroborated this research, with seeing these patterns for myself. The first is that they are doing this as part of the big weapons experimentation program in order to test these weapons on innocent civilians. Basically, the US government and the British government have a long history of doing this, testing weapons on civilians without their consent and without paying for it, or letting them know, without letting them know that they're testing these weapons. So they've always done this, so this is nothing new. It's a good, because not many people would consent to this, or if they did, they would expect a lot of money in return. So this is one way to test it out. I mean, the morals of some of the people in these places are next to nothing. So this is a way that they can test these weapons without consent, without having to pay hundreds or thousands of pounds to pay them to do it, and also in compensation if anything goes wrong. They just test it on the public, willy-nilly, to just because they can, basically, and just because they're moral, they have lack of morality and and compassion for other human beings. Also, and this is one of my strongest beliefs, is that this is, and belief of other people as well, this is a strong line of thinking in the community, is that this is done for political oppression. The third reason is because you got on the wrong side of someone, and maybe in the intelligence agency or the military or the government, and then you were nominated to be put on this list. This is also what's happening. These attacks are being used for revenge purposes, just because you got on the wrong side of someone in power. It doesn't even necessarily need to be someone in the government. People can nominate you, especially people who have high amounts of capital and money can nominate you to put you on one of these lists with a private security, a private intelligence agency, to have you systematically tortured with these weapons. And this is according to Susie Dawson, whistleblower Susie Dawson. So so these are the basic reasons, the experimentation, the political oppression, and because you were on the wrong side of someone, or as a revenge attack, same thing. So I personally believe, I've always been into personal development, and according to whistleblower Brian Coffran, he says that the people who get put on these programs are often what they described in these circles as empowered individuals, or people who were into, for example, self-improvement, personal development, and also people who questioned the official government narrative or questioned things and were into alternative research. For example, who runs the world, the powers that be, the international bankers and the power they yield, and all of these alternative subjects about how the world is really run and who the power structures are. He says that the people who are doing this, and especially the people who are exposing it, are the people who are put on these programs. So the empowered people who are doing the personal development, and these are targeted, from what Brian Coffran says, to because they want to do experimentation and research on people who they believe are intelligent or empowered, so that they can learn how to better the technology on people who may be more resistant to it, or people who have certain qualities or traits that would be better for them to research on. So it helps them. This also helps them develop the most efficient weapons if they can use it on people who they deem to be intelligent, and still turn them into their mind control slaves as they see them. This is what Brian Coffin says, and it makes a lot of sense and corroborates exactly with my research and what I've seen, you know, on the ground level, knowing a lot of victims in this. And the political oppression, well, of course, if you're speaking out against the government and the intelligence agencies, these programs have always gone on, you know, since COINTELPRO, where they used to target black rights movements and Martin Luther King and, you know, Malcolm X, and the government has always targeted activists with organised stalking campaign, and you know, and even things like MK Ultra, and it's slowly evolved and to become more technological and sophisticated, where now they use these weapons remotely to oppress and suppress what they class as dissidents, or people who are going against the grain of government and against the typical way of thinking, you know, that government is trying to promote, because they don't want free thinkers. They don't want people who think against the grain. If we look back in history, we always can see that free thinkers are the ones who are persecuted. Look at Jesus, for example. I mean, that's an extreme example. Even he was persecuted because he was someone that, you know, they knew could do a lot of good and would destroy the power structures, and then even in that day and age. Well, it's the same with any person who is more empowered or is you know, maybe has information, like has a new scientific invention. There are a lot of scientists who are finding themselves targeted with this technology because they have information or new science that they've researched and brought to light that is threatening in the power structures and their ability to make money and keep us under control, because they have control by having that disparity of technology and a level of technology and weaponry that is more advanced than we have in the public. So they don't like scientists breaking the mold, for example, and you know, bringing out new technologies that will threaten their control and their monetary situation, their richness. So yeah, and also military whistleblowers also get put on these programs as well. You know, after they get to know too much in the military, and all of a sudden they become a threat. They go from being a help to being a threat, which is very sad after people risk their lives to work in the intelligence and the military, and then all of a sudden they become the victims of the military and the intelligence agencies. Very sad indeed. So, so basically, to summarise that, is I believe, originally when I went to Thailand, I believe that I believe that this was all part of an experimentation program, which probably had already been going on before then, but in a less obvious way, in a more covert way. And then when I was in Thailand, I believe this program, it was the ideal opportunity perhaps for them to use this program on me in a more way whilst appearing more covert. I mean, this is my leading theory, that this was actually going on before, and I have good reason to think that, but then it just started happening more intense when I was in Thailand. And so this suggests, because I wasn't into spreading information about the power structures in the world, or like talking bad about the government back then. I wasn't doing any of that kind of political stuff that would get me politically oppressed and put in this program. All I was doing was trying to improve myself, you know, look into personal development, look into spirituality. I wasn't really doing any of that stuff back then. I wasn't like, you know, researching like, you know, all of these truths about the government and the intelligence agencies and the history and how corrupt they all, you know, how much corruption there is in these organisations. I wasn't doing any of that. So this leads me to think that I'd already been chosen as a subject of experimentation, perhaps because I was into into these topics of personal development and self-help. And so I was a good topic, I was a good experimental subject to use this technology on, to see whether they could still control me, and learn lots from that. You know, so I believe they may have seen me as an ideal subject on this level to do that. I also believe that as the years went on and I learned more about this, you know, that I learned more about you know, alternative research, and I found more about the truth movement, and you know, the way the world runs, and who's in control, who's where the power lies in society. And as I started to become more vocal about this, I also noticed an increase in my targeting, and the level of oppression which was facing me with this weapons technology. And so I also believe that as well as this experimentation, there is also a large element of political oppression that is occurring to me now, and this kind of gradually came to the fore over the years, where now, you know, these weapons are probably being used on me more for the reason of political oppression even than experimentation. Although I believe the two go hand in hand, so I believe that they're using these weapons for political oppression, but then they're also experimenting with these weapons at the same time to gain more data to improve the weapons even more. So the two go hand in hand, in my opinion, and I believe that both of these reasons are relevant in my case for the reasons why I am being targeted today. I don't believe this is any kind of revenge attack. I don't have any enemies that I'm aware of. I always try and not have enemies and not fall out with people, and there's no one I think would, you know, can't think of anyone who would hate me. You know, obviously there's people we don't get on with, but I don't think of anyone who would ever have hated me ever enough to put that on, or you know, to do this to me, or to nominate me to put me on a list for this to be done. But then again, you know, this is just what my research and my reasoning has led me to believe. So now I'm going to go on to the next part. So this is, how do I think this is being done? Well, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but I believe I've seen a lot of whistleblower testimony saying this is being done via satellite and cell towers. So I believe what's happening is there's a base station. They're using computer programs with artificial intelligence. This is on a supercomputer that has a large amount of power. This is based upon a combination of Brian Cochran's whistleblower testimony, who had access to these weapons, and also CIA whistleblower Carl Clark, and some other whistleblowers such as Paul Batcho, who talked about the cell towers being used. So I believe what they're doing is they have a base station with the software programs. They have the software programs have the artificial intelligence programs on them. They use the satellite to track you via radar, and they also use something called triangulation, where they can triangulate you to get a location on you. So they do this on your head, where they get one satellite or cell tower will be going into this area. One satellite or cell tower will be going to this area, and one will be going into this area. And that's the best way that they can gain a coordinate on where you are, because if they're just to do one, they can't get like an average of that. They need the three to get the average of where you are and to track you, is my understanding. or at least 3 points, so they can track you wherever you go. And this also enables them to do a remote EEG on you. So when people go and get an EEG done, which sees the inside working of the brain, you know, how the brain is functioning in real time, they're able to use this technology, but remotely from a distance. So and then because they can do the EEG and they can read your mind and your thoughts remotely, this is how they do the remote neural monitoring. So my understanding is they're using the satellites, but then the satellites are relaying actually to cell towers as well, and they're relaying the signal off the cell towers. And according to whistleblower Richard Lighthouse, they're using this ground system of the satellites even more than this ground system of the cell towers, even more than the satellites, because it's a cheaper way of doing it than using satellite systems, which are very expensive. So this is how I believe that it's being done. So there's also a whistleblower out there who says that they can actually track you via your DNA as well. But in my opinion, they're able to do this without having to have your DNA or some kind of DNA, you know, some kind of DNA sequence from you. So the next question that I'd like to answer is, what evidence do I have? So I have my medical records showing these strange symptoms and patterns happening to me over a course of years, but also random patterns and symptoms happening to me, you know, which all seemingly having no medical or logical correspondence to each other. This really shows the pattern of what's been going on with me, and even the amount that I went to the doctors in the early days, because I didn't know what was going on, you know, and the health anxiety that this created in me. Yeah, it deeply upset me having to go to the doctors this many times and feel like there was something deeply wrong with me. But the truth comes out. The truth comes out. So I have my medical records showing, you know, all of these symptoms and what's been going on with me, and these can be corroborated with things like microwave sickness, microwave attacks, microwave symptoms. These can be corroborated with the US diplomats in Cuba and China, or Havana syndrome as they're calling it, not realizing this is a global phenomenon, not just a few diplomats in US and China. There is corroboration earlier, which remember when I read out the list of symptoms that the US diplomats had been experiencing and how they related to other victims globally. There is this evidence. I have photos also. Photos of the, you know, some of the abuse, for example, some of the minor burns that I've had. I have photos of after my ears have been assaulted and my ears are really red. I have photos after I've bitten my tongue. You know, I have photos of the abuse in my nose. My nose is swollen up. I mean, I had an issue with my nose there before, but it just made it worse. I have my diary experiences where I've written these experiences down, and on a day-to-day level. I have witnesses to what has been going on with me. I have I've done a mail merge campaign, which also shows kind of like evidence that this has been going on with me to the extent that I've become an activist to try and overcome this. You know, in a sense, this is kind of evidence as well, because everything I'm doing, you know, when I'm on Twitter, when I'm on Facebook, when I'm doing my campaigns, in a sense, that's an evidence trail. This is all one big evidence trail that is not just helping to free us, but is also leaving an evidence trail for the future generations so they can look back. And this will be recorded in history because of the evidence that was collected on Twitter, all these years when, for example, people were getting ignored, and then all of a sudden, now people are starting to listen to us, and the UN are involved, and, all these agencies and US government agencies are investigating it in America. This will all go back as evidence in the history of time, not just for me, but for everyone generally. There is also an MRI scan that I've had done showing evidence. There is the other testimonies showing similar symptoms and similar testimonies and similar patterns and similar experiences. This is one of the main ones actually. Many affidavits have been done, and these corroborate with my own. There is patents that show the symptoms because the patents describe symptomology that the victims globally are experiencing. There is the microwave auditory effect, which I went into earlier, which was done by Alan Frey in the 1960s, and the buzzing, clicking, and ringing in the ears, and the audible sounds, the V2K. There is this comparison. There is the fact that I can just feel it, but this is more personal evidence, and I've used microwave shielding material to block it. Again, that's more personal evidence and personal verification. There is the and also personal verification that I can feel the frequencies and I can feel the corresponding change. This is just obvious to me and obvious to anyone that is a victim and has done adequate research in order to find out what's going on with them. Because there are people who, because they have no conception as that this could be going on, are victims for many years, as I was, without understanding what was going on. They just put it down to having an anxiety disorder, or being depressed, or being a bit disorganised, or skitty, or like having a breakdown or something. But when you actually research to the depth that I have, you start to see the patterns and the symptomology and see how that corresponds with other people. And this is the case we've got. So I've also done a 95-page affidavit outlining the all different areas of my assaults, of these remote weapon assaults. It's also worth just saying that there is lots of evidence out there on the internet. I think there's nearly 1 billion references to targeted individuals, and something similar for mind control. If you look at the amount of searches on Google, there is an abundance of evidence out there, and there's whistleblower testimonies, patents, videos of mind control in the 1960s with Bulls, Jose Delgado. There's also something called audio spotlighting, where you can see people being mind controlled remotely. So there's videos, there are pictures of microwave weapons, there are pictures of the burns and the assaults on people's bodies. There are 31 medical doctors at least that I know, I'd say doctors of their fields, that have come out and exposed this. There are also 4 actual medical doctors who have come out and exposed this, and 2 psychiatrists that have come out and exposed this. So there are a lot of very credible, intelligent people talking about this and trying to get this come out as a priority for government, the UN, etc. to look into. Actually, the UN are looking into it and have acknowledged this cause, which I will go into in another section. I will also be collecting other scientific evidence, for example, any nanotech that may have been, that may be in my body, that may be influenced, that may be being used to amplify this technology. They can do this without, and I believe that they are doing this without, but there may also be some additional evidence via nanotechnology in my body, which they have various ways that they can actually get into the body. So I just want to finish off this testimonial by giving out a message to the people who have put me on this program and to the people who are currently doing this to me. And I just want to say that if you haven't realized already the complete devastation you have caused to my life and the complete trauma and pain and suffering and misery that you've created in me. And I just want you to ask yourself, really, if anyone, if any human being deserves to be put through that year upon year, minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, for 14 years. And I just want to say that no human being deserves to go through what I've gone through and many others are going through. How would you feel if this was someone in your family or one of your loved ones who was experiencing this? We're all human beings and we all deserve to live with freedom, love, peace, and happiness. So I just want to make this abundantly clear that what you are doing is so wrong. It is the most degrading and debilitating thing that I believe has ever been created by man in my knowledge. And so please have the goodness to come forward and blow the whistle. Please have the goodness to change your heart and to expose these abuses, from going from doing this to actually being an agent of change and good in the world. So please think about yourself and what you're doing, and please think about all of the people that you have harmed, that you have hurted, and that you have traumatized through using this technology on them. And please have it in your heart to change and do the right thing and blow the whistle on this, be an agent for change. And that's all I really want to say, is to just to urge you, to plead with you to do the right thing. And that's all really I want to say. I thank you all very much for watching my testimonial and for learning the truth about what is going on. And I want to please ask you to share the message, to share the cause, to share this testimonial, to please sign up to my subscribers list, and to help, because this is something we are all in terms of the freedom and free will of our children and future generations depends upon us all having a strong voice for this cause. Please share this testimonial with government officials, with government, with media groups, with the mainstream media.